This week on Windows Weekly, Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell talk about the widgets. Oh boy, the new lock screen widgets in Windows 11. The snipping tool is updated. Dell PCs based on the Snapdragon X leak. Anything? Anybody? Bueller? How about Microsoft Word? It gets a long overdue overhaul to default paste. Really, there's some great stuff. Actually, we're going to talk about OpenAI's event on Monday, Google I/O's event on Tuesday, Apple's possible response next month, and what Microsoft's up to, plus a bunch of Xbox news. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 881, recorded Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. Big boy teams. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft with Mr. Paul Thurrott from Thurrott.com, THURRO.com. Hello, Paulie.
Hello.
And I believe he's still in Madeira Park.
Still at home. Still at home, yeah.
Mr. Richard Campbell of runasradio.com. Hello, you two.
Homebody.
Winners. How's it going?
It's good to be at home. It's going to end next week, right?
Oh,
yep.
Travels
That's
begin.
okay.
Once again.
We'll be together, but we'll in Seattle.
Yep.
Next time you see this, I think
that's
we'll be
right.
in one of the
Build.
recording booths.
Build is next week, huh?
Yep.
Any changes in your expectation that Build will be a fun-filled mirth fest?
Oh yeah, no, I don't think. I think it'll.
I don't think any changes in what we expect. I'm not sure.
The word Copilot will be said a couple of times.
Copilot. It was so funny. Yesterday at Google I/O, Sundar Pichai said, "I'll save you some time. We've had our AI count it, and we said AI 120 times. Oops, that's 121.
Because it was AI, they actually said it 130 times, and that thing is never.
It was hallucinating.
Actually, I don't know that many people other than me and Richard and people like us would even notice this, but it's very clear that Google I/O is morphing into Build. They're doing like 2 days of keynotes. They've got like different announcements on different days now. All the Android stuff is happening right now as we speak.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just like this is like during the pandemic, Microsoft realized that their default meeting time of 1 hour in Teams was too much, that we needed to go back to 30 minutes, except in the exact opposite direction. Like, let's make this longer and more tedious. You know?
Well, and then remember, there's also this dynamic of pulling stuff up into the first day because that's the one that gets the most airtime anyway.
Yeah, so they didn't do any Androids, hardly any Android stuff.
Yeah. So
yeah, they said Android more
Microsoft's
than they
moving
did
away from
last
that.
year, but
really, they didn't talk about Android last year. That's ironic.
They said Android one time in the Google I/O keynote last year.
You're kidding.
Wow.
Which caused a little bit of a problem in certain circles, you know. But anyway, it's okay. We're used to that. They don't say the word Windows in our keynotes, so you know,
so weird.
it's all good.
Yeah, I don't know. This is going to be an interesting set of keynotes. It's
you're talking about Build, or you're talking about of course, the real thing.
Not we have the book of news, and if we did, we weren't allowed to talk about it yet. But it's definitely, what's happening to me right now is I'm organizing a podcasting space. So I have various execs and their handlers coming at me saying, "Hey, I'd really like to talk to a podcast about, this and that." So you get an idea of what they care about.
Right? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, I mean, a lot of this is going to be obvious. Like you said, AI. There's going to be some device news next week. I don't know if we talked about this, but some Snapdragon something.
The Monday event.
Road.
Yeah.
And then this is the developer shows are hard, difficult in a way, at least for me, because I care very deeply about big chunks of it, and I care not at all about big chunks of it, right? And so you have to kind of get through the stuff you don't care about sometimes to get to the
I'm concerned about you calling Build a developer show, really, because I just look at the session catalog and say, sure, it's a developer show. Are you sure?
What is it?
It is.
If it's not a developer show,
it's got.
Like
it's
an
got.
AR,
I mean, it's got some
AI
developer
PR
content, some, but
yeah. Well,
huge.
there's a marketing component to what's happening right now, of course.
And also, like, it's about their new product. So lots of conversation about Fabric, lots of conversations about Copilot, some Power Platform stuff. Like, I mean, on one hand, you can say, well, everybody's a developer now. But on the other hand, you can also say the folks who make their living writing software wouldn't agree.
Yep, that's right. Well, that's like Microsoft several years ago said everyone's a creator, and fair enough. I mean, some of us use finger paints, but some of us are Dutch masters. I guess it depends. Who we're talking about here. So yeah. Anyway, it's going to be interesting one way or the other. That's for sure. We'll see. I don't know the details yet, so
all I know is I'm going to be watching those keynotes closely. I'll be taking some notes, and on Wednesday at 11-ish, we will be talking about them.
There you go.
There you go. That's all
We're
you
also
need
going
to
be
know.
Lining up the interviews you'll be having for your show for the next 3 months or more, right? I mean, some people aren't going to be around during the show, and it's like, okay, that's interesting. I got to talk to that guy. That's interesting.
There's some I got a pretty good VP catalog here. Like the July run as roster
is looking good.
Is Microsoft VP heavy.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. I'm not unhappy. All amazing people, delighted to talk to them. But normally with the normal process to get a VP on the show, you're lucky to get one a quarter, and I'm going to get like 4 in a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's a full frontal going on right now, right?
There is. And that's exactly who's coming at me. All the keynoters.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, some of these guys are like small woodland animals. You got to kind of kick them a little bit to get them on the stage, But I think there's an imperative now at Microsoft. Like we got to get out in front of people and sell. I'm
because they see that's good, right? Like it's been a while. They've seemed very awkward on how to communicate, and I've been using my access to back channel essentially to pull it off for a lot of things, which I still do. But I am appreciating the engagement I've got this time around. Just good folks that know what they're doing. It's like, let's go through the pipeline. And then the joke, of course, is that half the time the chief of staff of whoever VP is like, oh, it's Richard. Hey, great to talk to you. Da-da-da-da-da. Right off we go. Like, well, I've been doing this a long time. It's fair. I do know what I'm doing, and this is where we're going. And I really want you to talk to these folks.
Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to that on Run as Radio. And you and I and Paul will all convene next week to talk about. By then, we'll know what Build is all about. Yes.
Yeah. The second day keynote, which is, I believe, mostly Scott Guthrie and his team of folks. That'll be interesting. Are on the second day keynote, and I think they're wrapped by 10-ish. So we'll have a little bit of time to digest before we go on.
Nice. Okay. So that's our agenda for next week. What's on the docket for this week?
Yeah, it's going to be a familiar mix.
Maybe some Windows
11. And
isn't that an old
AI
Microsoft conference?
All kinds of stuff.
It is Patch Tuesday yesterday.
Yeah.
It was first Tuesday of the second month of the third eon of
that's
Satya Nadella.
Exactly how they describe it.
Yes.
It's when the moon is blue and it's 3/4 full, we release updates.
And the crystal reflects on the point of the reboot key.
Yes. Patch Tuesday, as we know, is the second Tuesday of every month. That was yesterday. I was Richard was like, hey, I'm here. I'm alone. I'm like, yep, sorry. I sat down and had to reboot my computer.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, nothing major.
That's why when I came in, my computer said something went wrong, but don't worry, we're redoing everything.
Yeah, the thing that went wrong was Patch Tuesday happened, and when you reboot, you're going to have new widgets on your lock screen that nobody asked for. I think it was a month or two ago. I can't remember when it hit stable, but they added that one weather icon, which was, I guess, vaguely inoffensive. But now there's 2 more icons, and
well, my update failed. My cumulative update for Windows 11 23H2 and my .NET update failed. So should I do them again? You don't mind if we stop the show for about
for 30 minutes? I mean, you're going to have to do it eventually. It will happen. You can do it if you want. There's nothing major as far as day-to-day use stuff goes.
I could do it during the Mac show.
There you go.
When you don't need it.
Mac Break Weekly is on Wednesday today, right after you guys, so you can rip them all.
There you go.
Yeah.
And also for Windows 10 also received updates today, or yesterday rather, including the same lock screen widgets and then the account notifications that debuted first in Windows 11. These are the things where you open the start menu, there's a little orange button or a little whatever overlay on your profile picture. You click on it, it's like, hey, you should use OneDrive folder backup or whatever message they want to send to you. So enjoy that little bit of annoyance that I've been suffering from for the past 6 months. You thought Windows 10 was a safe haven, you're wrong. So there's that. And then let's see, since the show last week, there have been several updates to the Insider Preview program. Some of them are like outside of builds. In other words, sometimes they just update apps or experiences in Windows that aren't tied to a specific channel. So the Snipping Tool is being updated throughout the system with emoji support and QR code scanning. I'm not really sure what the deal is there. Because you can't just hit like a point where you're like, okay, this tool's actually pretty good. I wasn't sure about you updating it. Oh, you're going to keep going? Oh, I see. Now you're just going to ruin it like they did that with Notepad. Like Notepad, like, okay, nope, I like what you did. Oh, what you see is what you get. Really? Oh, that's interesting. It's like they just can't stop doing it, right? And then Paint is being updated just to remove that co-creator name, which was unique to that one app. They're just going to call it Image Creator, which is the name they use everywhere else with Copilot. So no big deal there. There also this one is people were freaking out about ads in the start menu. Let's see the reaction to this one. They are testing widgets in the start menu, and not in the start menu, but attached to the side of it like giant barnacles. And I don't know what's happening anymore with these people. I think that Microsoft had a good idea a million years ago for something called live tiles. And it was a good idea for phones where you pick up your phone and you can see at a glance what's going on in your world. And in many cases, you realize I don't have to go into that app. I can see on the thing on the tile what's going on. I don't have to go in and out. And obviously their Windows Phone system did not succeed, but they brought this thing to Windows 10 as well, where it made a lot less sense, right? Because
it started to Windows 8, really, right? Like the revamp of Windows 8 seemed to adopt a lot.
Oh, sorry, I meant literally the same. So you're right. I mean, it debuted in the Windows 8 start screen, right? And that made explain, by the way, why the Windows 8 start screen was a screen and replaced the desktop for all intents and purposes in the first release, because this kind of interface only makes sense when you can see it. Right? It has to be on screen all the time. That's not how we use our computers, right? The start menu is something you go into to launch and you get out of. It's a launcher. And so when we got to Windows 10, live tiles just didn't make any sense anymore.
No, they were a distraction. Like if you pop up the start screens because you got something to do. Get out of my way.
Out of my way, buddy.
Yeah, the live part of it wasn't just live data, although that was the point. They also animated. And there were live tiles that didn't do anything with regards to live information, but they would just sit there and spin in circles and do things. And it was
touch me, click me.
Yeah, distracting.
Oh, you mean like Clippy?
Yeah, well, like a set of 5-year-olds with cotton candy.
Guys, if you have, let me see if I can figure out which. I wrote a couple of articles related to this. Bloat. So there's an amazing description of Bill Gates' reaction to Clippy. Where he swears, I'm gonna tone this one down, but he referred to this thing as that effing clown. And so in the software code that they used to create the Office Assistant, which is the actual name of that product, they use Hungarian notation, and the prefix for that object is TFC, which stands for that effing clown.
Oh no.
So the guy who gives the demo the first time says, okay, the assistant appears and each step in the sequence creates a chart and the user interface does this, but it would be more friendly and approachable. And then Gates says, so when I want to create a chart, that effing clown will pop up and say, I'm here to help. And the guy's like, no, it's not clown. It's an assistant. He goes, okay, so the clown pops up and I'm clicking on the clown and I'm saying, clown, do this next, clown next, or something like that. He goes, the assistant is just a more approachable and helpful version of the same number of clicks that you always had. He goes, yeah, next. And pretty soon, I just want that effing clown to get out of the way.
And then, irony of ironies, he married the effing clown's mama.
Yeah, so that was his reaction to the Office Assistant, which I think is beautiful. But yes, a well-meaning but poorly implemented idea that its proponents will tell you was ahead of its time. I think flushing it down the toilet was the right choice there. But yeah, it's funny you bring that one up because that just came up this week. I was just describing this in an article about software bloat related to these Windows widgets things, right? So widgets is Microsoft's new attempt at this kind of a thing.
By the
It
way,
exists.
Richard's saying, excuse me, but Melinda Gates worked on Bob, not Clippy. Like there's
Well,
a
Bob was the
difference.
original.
That was the friendly puppy interface, not the paperclip interface. Come on.
Well, no,
Okay, I stand corrected.
No, that's not. No. Office Assistant had many characters, and one of them was the puppy, and the puppy was also in Windows XP.
Yeah,
in the search bar. Remember?
Yeah. So you could say she was Clippy's.
Clippy was just the default one.
Progenitor.
No, Bob was the first version.
Yeah, but Clippy came from Bob, didn't it? I mean, it was
right.
like
That's what. Yeah,
right.
That's correct.
Indirectly, but it's the progenitor anyway.
Progenitor.
It's
all right.
Okay. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. So,
sorry. Widgets. Let's talk about widgets, Paul.
Oh boy.
So I think I like the idea that these widgets are just the lineage of Bob. This is great.
The descendants of Bob.
That's it.
So the difference between Bob, well, not Bob, because Bob was its own interface, really.
Its
but
own
was
madness.
the Office Assistant or the Search Assistant in Windows XP, right? Was that those things would appear in a context centered way, like that when you needed them, right? That live tiles made sense because they were on screen all the time, and that made sense for a phone, right?
Right. They were for partial attention, right? It's like you often flip up your phone and look at it and flip away again, and the tiles made total sense in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, back in Longhorn, they had this idea of a sidebar, and they were going to have, I think they were called gadgets originally, but the widgets essentially, right? That would be written in probably JavaScript and HTML that would sit there, and that thing would be on all the time, and that made some sense. Plus, we were moving to widescreens at that time. We had this extra real estate on the side. It didn't take off regardless, but that was an idea. And then by the time we get to Windows 10 and 11, we have this widgets interface, as we call it now, Windows 11, or news and interests in Windows 10, and they're icons on the taskbar, and they're not always there. And they don't even support pinning. You couldn't leave it on. So having this interface in many ways is, it's superfluous. Like for most people, it doesn't make any sense. And it also kind of betrays I think a central misunderstanding of how most people use their computers, which is not for Windows, but to run apps, right? Like I'm here to run Word and Edge or Chrome or whatever and Photoshop, and I don't want these distractions around me, but Windows has a lot of distractions these days. So yeah, I guess the feeling here is we've created this widgets infrastructure for some reason. No one seems to be using it, which makes sense. And maybe there's a better way to surface these. I guess you could put them on the desktop, like active desktop back in whenever that year was, 97, 98. I guess you could have a sidebar of some kind that was always on the screen again. And Microsoft's like, well, let's attach them to the start menu maybe. So that's a depressing turn of events. Because I will say, whatever anyone thinks of the Windows 11 start menu, and I think there are opinions, it's clean and minimalist, and it does kind of get out of the way. In fact, if anything, it gets out of the way a little too much. But if you use it as a launcher, you can populate it with the shortcuts you want and get on with your life. And I don't know that adding junk to that is a great idea, but I obviously don't make decisions at Microsoft or anywhere else for that matter, even at my own company, really. So who cares what I think? And then beyond those two things, the widgets, the snipping tool, the paint stuff, which kind of exists outside of builds. We've had new dev, beta, and now Canary Today builds since our last show. Nothing dramatic at all. Like, in fact, today's Canary build is just small fixes, nothing interesting. I joked last week, I think, about the share interface in Windows, which is something I wrote about somewhere recently, where how this kind of evolved over time. And Microsoft is trying to bring like a mobile style share interface to Windows, because the legacy tools for sharing, like, folder shares, home group, whatever, it's all gone. Well, not gone. It's just too hard for most people. And the Microsoft account sign-in infrastructure they have doesn't accommodate that stuff very well. But first of all, nobody uses. I mean, I don't have the telemetry data. I very confidently can state nobody uses this thing, and they're just trying to make it better. And I appreciate it, but I just don't. I just think it's pointless. So remember, they added app or specific apps to share because those app makers wouldn't do it themselves. So they're like, we're just going to add them. We'll do it for them.
I mean, this is the question: is there widgets we would want versus widgets that they make money from?
I don't know. I don't think that's their concern. Honestly, I think it should be, but I don't think that's their concern.
Yeah, I think it's the widget. It's just the widgets they're making money from. They make money by putting these things on our screens.
Yeah, that could be.
So they don't make money from weather, do they?
No, but I think that's your one small
exception. That's the one exception.
No, it isn't. Weather drives traffic to an MSN website.
Oh, of course.
Microsoft ads. This
money.
is all related to their attempt to be the next Google in that space.
So it's a profit thing.
Yeah, of course.
It's a revenue source.
It's also so I go back to the widgets thing. I guess the widgets that are on the lock screen. You can turn it off, right?
Right.
So that's nice. What you can't do is configure it, right? You can't say, I want the weather one, but I don't want the other ones, right?
Right.
Now,
all or nothing.
There's no doubt that will come, right? And that there will be more widgets that you can put on your lock screen. But this is the way Microsoft does things now, right? They just they just throw it out into the world like in a half-formed form or whatever. And that's what we get. And it feels like an afterthought and I don't like it. But anyway,
they swore to me this would take 3 minutes. Oh, it is. Look at that. It went from 20 to 92% in about 5 seconds.
No, because numbers are hard.
Why is that so hard to get a progress bar to be accurate? I mean, what is
because you don't know how long it's going to take. You have to guess.
Yeah.
I've played with a lot of variations on this as a developer over the years. The only thing I've learned for sure is if you go back down again, it makes people really angry. So don't do that.
So I'm trying to see. I don't have any lock screen widgets, so I have to turn those on, I guess. Huh?
You shouldn't. Okay. It should be on by default. So I don't know.
It'll come at you. Give it a minute.
Okay. It
they've come up on the first boot for me on every single computer. So
I didn't see any. I just saw the beautiful.
Are you sure that's what you installed?
Oh, you mean I may not have installed the?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you might have gotten an earlier update. I don't know if it was the May update.
And now there's more updates.
Maybe. Let's see.
It's like going to Home Depot. If you go to Home Depot, you know you're going to have to go back to Home Depot.
Checking for updates. Let's check for updates. Checking for updates. Update checking. Now, I checked this box, get the latest updates as soon as they're available. Is that okay, Paul? I didn't join the Windows Insider program. I just said
I mean, it's a halfway step between stable and the Windows Insider program. That just means you're automatically going to get the preview updates.
Okay, so I'm up to date. Let me just lock this old screen. How do you do that?
Don't do that yet. Go to settings.
Okay. This is always the fun part where you lead me through Windows and I
little live stream.
No idea how this works. Okay.
Go to personalize.
Personalization.
Personalization. Lock screen.
And then down to lock screen.
All right. So the second item down says lock screen status.
Weather and more. That's good.
You do have it. That's it.
I think I'll stick with weather and more.
Because it's not just weather. It's got to be
weather and more.
Well, it used to be weather, and now it's weather and more because it's got these other things.
Right. Okay. How do I lock her?
Windows key plus L will do it.
Oh, that's right. I remember that from my grade school days. There they are. There's stuff. There's lots of stuff.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so
I got weather, I got markets, I got the NBA scores. I now know the Knicks won.
They're attractive, That's not
It's
ugly.
not horrible.
No.
Yeah, that's not the claim. The claim is nobody asked for this.
Right.
Yeah. Also, if you have Windows Hello with your facial recognition on,
long. Yeah.
You'll see it for 1 second. And you're like,
right. Right.
So the whole thing is not, it's just ill-conceived. The whole thing is just, we've already given it more thought than Microsoft has. I mean, right in this show.
I love it.
Well, and I keep hearing that term. It's like we're customer data driven, right? So
are we?
What's the customer data that says that we need these widgets?
What's like We threw a grenade in the room, and now we're just collecting the feedback.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Our customer data shows we're not collecting enough money per customer. So how can we fix that?
But I do now know that it's chocolate chip day.
National Chocolate Chip Day, not just any old chocolate chip day.
National.
Yeah, I mean, Mac OS doesn't tell you that.
No, it's true. I don't know that from my Mac OS. You're absolutely right.
That would only be iChips.
Stupid. The iChips are too fast to display the weather. They couldn't even handle it. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. Anyway,
No.
I guess the short version here is just that across Dev, Beta, and Canary, there's been nothing of interest. That's all. Other than this weird testing of widget. Well, that's not even occurring officially. So yeah, this is not. They added. So I mentioned they added the ability to email yourself from the share pane, right? Because that's how PC people think, right? Mm-hmm. So in the no, I'm serious. In the beta build, they added copy to clipboard, and it's like, guys, serious. Like, who am I sharing a copy to clipboard? Nice. I'm sharing it with myself. What does that mean? Why would I need that? It's ridiculous.
Wow. That's
I got to tell you, something I did today or this week. I recorded a show, and for whatever reason, OneDrive just barfed on the recording machine. It's mad. I'll deal with it. The other machine's working fine. So I did stick a USB. Now, of course, I still use those rack mount workstations. So they're literally one on top of the other. Yep. So I plugged the USB key into the top one, copied the file on, pulled it out, moved down 6 inches, plugged it into the lower one, went to the other machine.
Oh, I've said this a million times. I think I'm the only person on earth who uses the nearby sharing feature in Windows 11. That said, I use email and I use USB keys. I use portable hard drive or SSDs now. I do all the same stupid stuff that every Windows user does because, it works.
Yeah.
Sometimes SneakerNet is.
I had something to do, right? Like it wasn't. I wasn't worried about optimizing this process. I was worried about getting it done.
Well, the other thing is, so my wife also works from home, and I actually think it helps sometimes if I stalk around the house in a menacing fashion, and it's like he's obviously busy. I should leave him alone. I'm part of it is just for perception.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just. Well, or, look, it's Windows. Let's just be honest here, right? I am on this computer and I go to do nearby share and I click it and the computer I'm sharing to doesn't come up. It's sitting right here.
Yeah.
I can see it. I'm next to the router. They're both on Wi-Fi. You're like, you know what? USB key works every time. I'm just saying. So,
Yep. So it's hard to argue with. I mean, these two machines are connected to the same switch.
Yes.
So,
Yes. In the next section, we're going to talk about a hardware-based solution that will be yet another way to solve this problem. But for now, we're stuck with what we have. And, sometimes it works. That's Windows. Sometimes it works.
That's it. There's a logo for you. There's a motto for you. Sometimes it works.
In contrast to Apple's slogan, which is, it just works.
Yeah.
Right. Which, both of those things are not actually true.
No, I know. And both fictions.
Yeah, Microsoft had the old, where do you want to go today?
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you where I want to go, buddy. Well, sorry. What are we talking about?
Then they made management operations, and we called it Microsoft Mom. Where do you think you're going today?
Oh, boy.
Yes.
Where do you think you're going today?
Which became Microsoft Stepmom, which nobody likes. And
then to the cloud.
Yeah.
Our world is so screwed up. But you know what?
I missed that ad about the cloud. That was a good ad.
To the cloud.
To the cloud. That was a good ad. Do you want to talk more about things like Dev and Beta and Canary? Do you want to?
No, thank you. No,
Please, come on.
You've pushed me too far. I'm done.
All right.
No, it's good.
This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by HP and Intel and the new HP Elitebook 1040 G11. This is HP's first commercial AI PC. So it's got that Copilot key. Intel Core Ultra processor, like that, which has the NPU, right? The AI acceleration.
Right, yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
That's Intel's big boy.
To empower your workforce, deliver exceptional performance. Battery life outstanding on this. I thought that, they're saying 29 hours battery life. I thought, wait a minute. So I haven't plugged it in for 3 days. It's still going.
Really?
Yeah. It doesn't get very warm. So they've definitely they've figured it out, right?
Yep.
They figured it out somehow. It's world-class security with the HP Wolf security. I love that. You get Smart Sense. This is I should give you the numbers. The 1040 G11, the HP Elitebook 1040 G11. Of course, it comes in different styles and stuff, but this is I like this kind of clean, white style, very light,
nice and trim.
Those are actually pretty much my favorite PCs, the Elitebook 1040s.
Has been for a long time. Comes with Smart Sense, which monitors your PC's vitals, your innards, making automatic adjustments. Maybe that's why I'm getting such great battery life to energy hogging resources. 29-hour battery life. They balance the battery, the fan processor, everything that runs in your laptop. You just work on, getting stuff done, and they'll take care of the guts. It's also got this new Poly. You mentioned that they acquired this company. It's Poly Studio is on the front here. The new Poly AI-driven audio and Windows Studio effects. Now, this is really cool. It does the eye contact it's got a Windows Hello camera and a fingerprint reader. I set it up for both just because it's nice to have both, right? But Hello's so fast. I rarely get my finger to the fingerprint reader. It will automatically adjust your eye line so you've got eye contact with whoever you're talking to. Face framing. It's got dynamic voice leveling that adapts to the environment. So you get the great voice clarity based on what's going on, background noise reduction, and so forth. Of course, that Copilot key means you have access to Copilot. I think the AI assistant's really cool. It will suggest personalized optimizations for the system, streaming for efficiency. You can use learning deadlines and personal productivity patterns to help you set priorities, manage your time effectively. This comes with Windows 11 Pro. I love it. The latest, you could have your choice of the Intel Core Ultra 5 or 7. 14-inch, I love an OLED display. That's all I'll ever do from now on. This has a nice OLED display on it. 5-megapixel camera, HP Wolf security for business, and so much more. On and on. This newest laptop will adapt to your workers' personal needs and behaviors so they can regain meaningful time and focus on meaningful work. Go to HP.com, search for the HP Elitebook 1040 G11 to learn more today. There's also a link in the show notes. You can check that, hp.com, and search for the HP Elitebook 1040 G11. You heard it right here, Paul's favorite Windows laptop. So thank you, HP, for supporting Windows Weekly. And you should take a look at a HP Elitebook 1040 G11. It'll make you happy because the price is right, and you'll make your employees happy because they've got a sweet ride. Thank you, HP. I'll be using this from now on. I don't even know where I put the other one. It's gone. Get out of here. All right, on we go with the show. Still more Windows to talk about, yes?
Yeah, sort of related to Windows, I guess we'll call it. There was a big leak about Dell's PC lineups for the next several years, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. But the thing I'm most interested in is their first Snapdragon X series laptops, right, which are coming out this year, including like a new version of the Dell XPS 13, which, as you would expect, thin, light, fanless, silent, beautiful looking, like just cannot wait. But this actually first happened to me. I guess I wasn't in Mexico, but it was like a month or so ago. It occurred to me, we're pinning so many of our hopes on this chipset, right? But the thing we might have forgotten about here a little bit is it will be an improvement, right? There's no doubt this is going to be great for the ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. But what if this is a bigger deal for other platforms, right? Like, Windows is complex. Like one of the big problems with porting Windows to ARM, and this is something Sinofsky writes about in his book, Hardcore Software, is this, you don't just like take the code base and recompile it. You have to refactor a lot of code. There's a lot of stuff that goes on under the hood, so to speak. There's a lot of backward compatibility stuff in there that has to be rewritten. And what you end up with on the other side is like the exact same system, just running on a different chip, and what you want is for this thing to be, to really take advantage of the underlying architecture and have that efficiency and performance and all that stuff. And, there are more modern systems, if you will, like Chrome OS, right, that run Android apps that run natively on these chips. And, and it's one of those like ideas that once it got stuck in the corner of my brain, I was like, oh God, like what if, so.
I got something else to be stuck in your corner of your brain. I just asked Copilot to generate an image of two podcasters who love to talk about Windows. And do you like this? That's more cartoony.
Goodness.
This is.
I'm waiting for Stadler and Waldo.
I know, that's good. You're twins. You're brothers practically. This could be the new Windows Weekly logo here with a mic. I noticed they don't hesitate to do the Microsoft logo in there, which is great. So, change your expressions to look excited. Make one of them wear. Oh, let's make one of them wear a Microsoft T-shirt. Sure, why not? I'm sorry, Paul. Were you saying something?
Who knows? Just
this is so fun. This is actually good. There's 5 fingers on each hand. I like it.
What's happening?
Nothing.
I'm sorry.
Nothing. I started playing with Copilot. That's all.
That's it. You press that Copilot button, funny things are going to happen.
Yeah, I like how I asked for. It was a picture. I can't remember the exact image, but it was basically like an older couple waving goodbye.
Yeah,
and their older people all look exactly the same. Like,
yeah,
no matter
it's
what,
interesting.
like
I said middle aged, so I probably should have said young.
Yeah,
I like this one.
Sure.
That's just like a mirror image.
Look at these guys.
Okay, that's the one. I'm going with this one.
Do I have to grow like a hipster mustache?
Hipster mustache. You need it. Yep.
Anyway.
Sorry. Go ahead.
There's also been a leak that Qualcomm will release, obviously, second-gen Snapdragon X chips sometime in 2025. No surprise there. But let's get through the first one before we get too excited about that.
Yeah. At least it means they've got the dies underway, right?
Yeah. I mean, right. I think the fact that there are going to be 4 SKUs of this initial generation right at launch was more than anyone expected, honestly.
Yeah, I thought that was binning. It's one die.
But that's fine.
Renders.
But I'm just saying it's still not what we, they've typically just released a chip, right? Yeah. So the fact that they're doing this I think is interesting.
It's exciting.
And then, and then just kind of tangentially related, Intel today announced something called Thunderbolt Share, which came out of nowhere, frankly. And this is an interesting kind of PC to PC hardware cable experience, basically. So
does anybody ever do that? Actually need to move files between 2 PCs?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I know.
It's like we're living in the future. But the thing that's cool about this is it also supports like Thunderbolt hubs, like you might have in a monitor, or Thunderbolt docks, obviously. So you can have 2 systems, and they're both just sharing a bunch of the same peripherals and over this connection. So yeah, okay.
Okay, so this is sharing a peripheral, not sharing files.
Well, you could share files as well. That would be one of the peripherals, would be storage, right? I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean? Like,
I was making fun of the fact we were talking about sharing and USB and
I referenced this earlier. I said we're going to talk about another
So this is the one, but now it's share by cable. Like I should just make sure I get 2 motherboards and these 2 workstations with Thunderbolt on the back by Intel.
It's pretty fast.
Stick a cable between them and just leave them connected.
It should be super reliable. Doesn't require Ethernet or Wi-Fi, right?
Right.
Doesn't require. One of the many ways I share with myself is to copy something into OneDrive or Google Drive right on one computer and then go to the other computer and act. Right. I mean, there's a million ways to do this, but I think this is, according to Intel anyway, there are a lot of like dual PC households. So you have like this, maybe you have like a desktop and a laptop or something, and that's not a bad idea. I mean, I have this setup, which right now is tied to a desktop computer, and honestly, being able to plug in a single cable and just use it all with a laptop is actually kind of
compelling.
Right. So a bunch of PC makers have signed up, including Lenovo, Acer, MSI, and Razer.
It's going to be the chipset. You might as well use it.
Yeah. And then Belkin, Kensington, OCW, a bunch of the peripheral guys too, right? So nice.
Oh, it's hardware.
Cool.
It's hardware sharing, hardware based.
Yeah, like over at Thunderbolt.
Oh, that's
4 or 5.
interesting.
Which is still a USB-C plug.
So it's not just a digital thing. There's something going on in the chip? Or no? Or it's just
how do they implement this? I don't know. I'm not really sure.
This sounds like there's a protocol aspect to this of the different kinds of sharing that can be done. Like we talked about sharing a peripheral, right? Like that's interesting to me. Like,
Yeah.
So
it's not just file
in other words, you
sharing,
have a dock.
things. Yeah.
You have it will be a new dock, right? Not an existing dock, but you have a new dock that has is connected to a keyboard and a mouse, and maybe some external storage, a couple monitors, whatever it is, Ethernet, and you have two cables coming in, one to one PC, one to the other, and they both use all the same stuff, right? It's it's interesting.
Yeah. So it might be a KBM alternative.
Yeah, like when you
as a byproduct.
Oh,
yeah, when you
yeah.
when you review, like when you look at if you look at reviews of laptops or just specs for laptops, like you'll see there'll be a port like USB. It's a USB Type C port. It's got Thunderbolt, whatever capabilities, which delivers some form of data transfer performance, 4080, whatever the number is. And it will have things like DisplayPort, whatever version. There's some kind of a storage standard. Like this will probably be added to that list. Like you'll see one of the things that port will support will be Thunderbolt share. I'm guessing. Just based on the way
just one more little logo to silkscreen on the cable.
Oh yeah, that's honestly that's Intel's version of a licensable moment, right? They probably get $1 every time they put a sticker on something. So yeah, nice.
And one more reason to be confused about what this cable will do versus that cable. It drives a lot of people crazy because it all looks like Type C, right?
Yeah, it all does look like yet another variation of C.
Yeah.
Why is this so bright? Oh,
God. Oh, yeah. He looks like you're working in the lab late one night.
I know. Hold on.
All of a sudden, you came upon.
Stand in front of the gamma ray emitter.
There we go. Much better.
Let's talk Microsoft 365.
Yeah. So as a recovering wordaholic, I have to exercise this muscle again. But I will say one of the one of my deals with Word over many years, like 25 years, was that I would always configure it in a very particular way, and I could actually step you through that whole thing. I won't, but if you go into Word Options Advanced and scroll down, you'll see a cut, copy, and paste section. And one of the things I changed on every single install of Word for me was I changed pasting from other programs from its default, which has been keep source formatting. Actually, that's not true. They changed it because that's what changed. Keep destination formatting, I believe, was the default. Doesn't really matter, but whatever it was.
No, I thought it was keep source formatting.
Oh, no, you're right. It was source formatting. Sorry. Nobody ever wants that. Right.
Yeah,
so
nobody ever wants that.
They're changing
I know
that
somebody doesn't understand it when I get an email with 17 fonts in it.
Right. So I've always changed that to keep text only. In fact,
keep text is always the correct answer.
My default paste is always keep text. I don't want any formatting nonsense, but Microsoft is making a change. This is sort of like the change they made to the print screen button in Windows, where this has been this way forever and is thus the way, all caps. They're changing it. And they're changing it to, I believe they're changing it to merge formatting, if I'm not correct, but they're changing it, whatever the change is. And the reason is because people have been complaining for 25 years, I don't want the formatting, and so there's obviously in place formatting changes you can make as you paste, right? You get that little quick toolbar thing that pops up, whatever it's called. And from there you can say, well, change the default formatting. I think a lot of people are reactive that way. They'll see that option and then make the change then. But you could just, if you're someone like me who likes to, really configure things, you could just do it yourself. Or now they'll just kind of do, I don't know if this is the right thing, but a better thing than what they were doing before.
Doesn't
by merging the
Control Shift Paste do that? Isn't that how you do that? Where you do
in Word? See, that's something that works everywhere. I want to say but Word, but let me. I really do want to say that, but let me look at that one. No, actually, okay. Well, let me look. Well, see, I've already changed it.
It's with or without.
No, actually,
formatting.
that works. No, that does.
Yeah.
No, it works.
Okay.
It does work.
All right.
I feel like it
concerned
didn't for a long time.
This merge mode scares me because it sounds like it gets to make decisions that are almost certainly incorrect.
It's doing more than
I wouldn't. This is not something I mean, literally, as someone who has relied on Word as the core tool of his entire adult life, I couldn't care less about this because, like I said, I very specifically
you don't want formatting.
Customize this.
You want minimal formatting because you're a writer as opposed to
text,
a poster maker or whatever.
That's
it
right.
is. Yeah,
that's right. Well, maybe you're in a
ransom note
workplace and you
editor.
have a corporate standard for fonts and styles, and I get that, right? And maybe you get something from outside the
But then
company.
you'd have
you
a
wanna put it
custom
in.
style sheet. You'd have a custom normal sheet.
I feel like what I just described, if you're at that level, you know how to do this. So
Right.
I don't see what the big deal is,
Right.
but whatever. Anyway, they made the change. Everyone thinks it's super exciting.
Super,
but,
super.
I don't know.
Fabulous.
The first time you paste, you get that little pop-up thing. Change the default paste. Just put it to what you want. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's
sensible. That's reasonable.
that's my
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
If you were worried that antitrust regulators from around the world were ignoring Microsoft so they could focus on Apple, Google, and Meta and Amazon, well, fear no more. According to a report, after, I want to say I thought this was longer than this, but I guess it's a year-long investigation into Microsoft bundling Teams and Office 365, really, Microsoft 365. They have apparently decided they're going to charge Microsoft with a formal complaint, meaning that they have violated EU antitrust laws and will face some form of remedy, which could include fines. And this is mostly interesting because we knew about this for a long time. Microsoft promised to make adjustments to put this off and prevent it from happening. And then a month ago, they announced they were just going to pull Teams out of Office, and then they did it. They just did it proactively, and apparently that's not enough for the EU. So that's amusing on some level.
What more do they want?
So the issue, as I understand it, is that when you decouple Teams from, we'll call it Microsoft 365, and as a customer choose not to use it or pay for it, you save $5 a month.
Right.
And Slack charges, I don't know what it is, $9 or $15 a month for the same thing. And thus, this isn't fair. So now there was a whole generation of people who complained that, and we're doing it today with Apple, of course, that antitrust regulators are in some way designing the OS now because they are putting in a ballot browser screen in Windows 10, or back then it would have been Windows XP.
Yeah, but it was
that kind
select the browser. Yeah.
Right. So they but now we're escalating. See, I didn't agree with any of that. I honestly thought that, like, actually, I will tell you point blank, one of the great things that came out of the US antitrust trial with Microsoft, which everyone or most people would describe as completely ineffectual, was the default apps interface that we still have in Windows. Now, granted, they're completely violating the spirit and point of it today in Windows 11, but for many, many years, we had this default app interface that worked pretty great. And okay, but that's one thing. Now we have the EU describing how much an individual feature of Office is worth per user per month, and it's like, I don't know.
It's that sounds pretty slippery.
I don't know. I don't know. So it hasn't happened yet. This is based on a third party report, obviously, but
right.
But from the Financial Times. This is not exactly a rumor mongering publication, so probably is the case. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's kind of weird, right? Like you did exactly what we wanted you to do.
Yes.
It's not enough.
And arguably, did they really say had to give a discount at all? Like, why not? I would think the first move is not to give a discount.
Yeah, right. Look, there is an internal debate in our industry about the kind of monolithic integrated approach offered by something like Microsoft 365, where it's everything from the same company. It makes it really easy.
And it's
maybe not everything is best
price.
of breed, right? Yep. Versus the kind of roll your own thing, right? You're like, I'm going to get Google Workspace.
And then
I'm going to pay
it
for
works,
Notion,
or maybe it doesn't.
I'm going to pay for Slack. Whatever it is. There's different ways to do things. I don't
Most CFOs I know use the same phrase. I'm looking for one throat to choke. Right? That's
I love it.
A good one. Yep.
Because as soon as you have multiple vendors with product suites that are supposed to work together, you get finger pointing. And it's like, I am looking for one throat to choke.
I think I just came up with Brad today. In my sort of ape brain, I feel like one of the reasons Windows has been so successful in the years in which it's been kind of less emphasized is just kind of inertia, and that there's a real stickiness in the commercial space with not making change, right? That this is an organizationally,
that's not my point, right? My point
was,
it's
not. No, but
I want that collective thing. No, it solves a lot of problems.
Not your point, but it ties into it. Like these are people that don't want to even upgrade to a new version of Windows.
No,
let alone because you think they're going to change platforms.
It's not broken,
like right. No, I am not arguing it. I'm just saying they're not going to Notion or Slack. They've chosen their path. They're not. So as consumers, like when we look at things like Google Search or Google Maps or Gmail or whatever, pick your product. I mean, they're switching between music services or browsers even or something. I guess there's issues, but there's not a big, these things aren't super sticky. Like I think it's it's doable.
I don't know. Spotify playlists.
No, I'm not saying it's nothing is absolute. I'm just saying there's a real stickiness to the commercial space. So when Microsoft makes this change, it has 400 and whatever million Teams users, right? Obviously that bundling has been successful. Plus, no offense, but the product's good too. I use Teams and Slack, and I would drop Slack in a heartbeat if I could. I hate Slack. But Teams started off not so good, but is much better than it used to be. So they're in a good place. They can say, we're going to drop this, and who cares? Because it's not, honestly, I bet Teams, it's not like, do you think there's going to be a month next month or the next where they're like, Teams usage fell a couple of points because the EU did whatever they did? Never going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
No. I mean, I always wondered how many installs of Windows N wherever was.
What's that?
Windows N, the version of Windows that didn't have IE installed in it that they had to make for the EU.
But again, that was about consumers, right? So faced with a choice, honestly, you could imagine. Was this even offered to businesses? Because I got to be honest, I could have pictured businesses saying, you know what, we are going to go with that. I don't want these people playing media stuff on their computers. I want them working. You could almost imagine the stupidity that could occur there.
And I still think the count is probably zero.
I think
virtually.
So. Yeah. No, listen, all these ideas were not winners. I'm not claiming that. Default apps, though, was a good one. But as far as this goes, Microsoft made the right decision because it doesn't hurt them, but it's also just the right decision because it should address this complaint. But apparently it does not.
No.
So,
of course, the question now is if you increase the discount to the same price as Slack, which you should not do, and this whole thing is stupid.
Nope.
Do you think it would change the customer in any way? I don't think it would.
Not at all.
No, this is a complete waste of time.
Right. So you have this user base that has just been alerted to the fact that they could save $5 a month per user by not using the tool. Every one of them uses every single day.
Yeah.
And now you send out a second email that says, well, the EU came back and said no. So actually now you're going to save $8 a month, but you have to go pay for Slack. Yeah. No, we're not learning a new tool. Screw that. There's no one's going to say yes to it.
No, and I'm not going to battle with the integration problems. I'm not going to create a separate icon. I'm not going to have a separate upgrade path. I'm not going to have to run different back-end services. Are you crazy?
Right. Yeah, that's why this doesn't make a lot of sense to me, I guess is the maybe easiest way to put it. So we'll see when they come out. But with the actual formal complaint, but what are you doing? This is, I don't know. We'll see. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for now, but to me, this doesn't make a lot of sense.
You gave me the idea that I unpin Teams from my taskbar, so thank you for that.
Well, that's because the Teams that's in Windows is not Teams; it's baby Teams.
Baby Teams. I don't want baby.
You don't want
Teams.
that. You should uninstall
big boy
that.
Teams. Yeah. How do I get big boy Teams?
You can go to the Microsoft store. That one I know is in the store.
Wait a minute, I'm confused. What is it on here then?
Oh, Leo, geez, welcome to our horrible world. All right, so for right now, temporarily on Windows, there are multiple Teams clients. The one that ships in Windows 11 is for consumers.
Even with Pro?
Confusingly named Windows or Microsoft Teams.
Yeah.
The one you get in the store or download from the web is called Microsoft Teams Work or School.
And
that's real Teams. That's actually Microsoft Teams.
So big boy Teams is actually for school. That's okay.
It is.
Or work.
Yep.
Or work. Yep. Let's take a little break while I figure this all out. And
you'll never figure this out, but we can take a break.
We'll have more.
It's not you.
It's not me. It's Teams. Our show today brought to you by something your team needs. Melissa, the data quality experts. Did you know that Melissa's global address verification and validation service verifies addresses in 240 plus countries and territories? I didn't even know there were that many. Wow, that is truly global. By doing this, Melissa helps your business keep your data accurate, which is improving deliverability, reducing costly errors. It boosts your address data accuracy. It increases delivery speed, and bada bing, bada boom, it boosts your ROI. Melissa's all about the return on investment. That's why they offer free trials, sample codes, flexible pricing. They're business people too. They know. But they also know every business should be using Melissa to keep their supplier data, their contact data, their customer data up to date. It's decaying as we speak. You don't have to worry about your data. They've achieved the highest level of security status that's out there. They are FedRAMP authorized. Now, that's for, of course, government agencies, which is good if you're working for a governmental agency. It's FedRAMP authorized. But every Melissa user automatically gains that superior level of security. Melissa's solutions are also GDPR, CCPA compliant. They meet SOC 2, HIPAA antitrust standards for information security management. So you know your data is being treated with the kid gloves it deserves. You could do it on-prem. You could do it as a SaaS API. They even have a secure FTP server. You could do it any way that fits your needs. I mean, the API is great because you can build it in your own software. Download free. If you want to try this, this is another way. You can put it right on your phone. The Melissa Lookups apps, iOS or Android. No sign-up required. You can use them. It's kind of a demo, but it works. You can validate addresses and personal identities in the U.S. or Canada. So you can see if Richard's really Richard. You could check global phone numbers. You could check global IP address information and a lot more. Get started today. 1,000 records cleaned for free. Great way to try it out. Do it right now. Melissa.com/twit. MELISSA. Melissa.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of Windows Weekly. Apparently, Richard and the other Canadians in the Discord are celebrating something.
Edmonton managed to beat Vancouver last night in Game 4 of the second round of the playoffs.
I love that you didn't identify the sport, and I also love that you are a stereotypical Canadian and that you love hockey for some reason. Seriously,
listen, like it's optional. What are you talking about?
Well, you could be like curling is actually the national sport of Canada.
And my wife plays in it competitively.
There you go.
So, and as did my younger daughter back in the day. And have I read the 2 scientific papers that try and explain the physical dynamics of how a curling rock works? Yes, I have. Do they contradict each other? Also, yes.
It's
Have I emceed end of year curling events? Yeah, I've done that too. Do I have a set of curling widower jokes? Why? Yes, I do.
Does she make you sweep up because her arms are tired? Yes.
No. My experience of having a wife who curls is that on Tuesday nights, she leaves before dinner. She gets back after midnight with whiskey on her breath and freezing cold feet that she puts in the small of my back.
I love it. I think I want to curl. We have a curling league in the Bay Area. Yeah. Jason Snell plays in it.
We have actually rented a sheet like during the Christmas holidays and got all our friends and neighbors together to do a little bit of curling, which is really a great way to give your friends and neighbors a concussion. The curling ice is a lot harder than skating ice.
Oh, interesting.
Well, because the ice is so hard, it's very slick.
Oh, that's interesting. Right? They keep it really, really hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to fall. In fact, very famously, one of the best curlers in the world, a guy named Brad Gushue, fell on the ice during a tournament. He's a skip for one of the Canada teams. Broke his nose.
Oh, no.
Bleeding. Missed the rest of the end, ran across the street to the clinic. They stuffed his nose full of batten and was back for the next end. Because curlers are badass.
It's a manly sport. That's what we know now.
Well, here's the thing that I liked about having a daughter who curls. Every curling rink has a bar. So it's like, I got to take you to practice. I can stay and wait for you to finish.
So now I have 2 candidates for the title of this show. A wife who curls or a daughter who curls.
Curls, yeah. Both legit.
Hey, thank you. We've got a cleanup on aisle 2. We have a new look for the Microsoft Teams hosts. Is that Richard and Paul that you've put in the image there? Jason Snell hard at work. I don't know. I guess it looks more like them. That's Paul on the right, isn't it?
No idea. Didn't know it was modified at all.
Old sea captain.
There you go.
All right. Enough silliness. Let's continue with the show. Where are we on the rundown now? Paul, I defer to your good judgment.
I'm sorry, what?
What are we doing? Oh, we're talking about AI.
OpenAI.
Did you watch the ridiculously short event that said nothing? Did you?
The OpenAI event?
Yeah, on Monday.
Yeah, I think it was nice that they repurposed an IKEA showroom.
I like that set. I was going to say I want to use that set. I loved that.
Here's the thing. That event was short and to the point, and
completely eclipsed Google's event for the next day.
Yep, that was definitely a middle finger at Google, which I love. But here's the thing. There was, in their own awkward live way of doing things, they, for the first time, appeared to be humans. Like, this is a company that appeared to date to be like robots, And I have to say, there's something a little refreshing about this event and its clarity. And this was driven home the next day when Google gave what felt like a 4.5-hour keynote about 3 million announcements that no human being could ever follow. And this was tied to something we were talking about earlier, where, you go into this saying, well, I care about some things, but not about others, and that if we're going to have dev show keynotes that are marketing events, maybe it's time to split this thing up into better groups of things and keep the developer stuff to its own thing, right? And maybe even multiple developer keynotes where it's, client-side stuff for Android or Chrome OS or whatever it is, and then the backend stuff and the LLMs and everything. I found the Google thing to be a mess, and I feel bad because there's a perception that they're behind. Nothing that's happening right now could have happened with what Google did first, right? Without that happening. I mean, I don't really think that they're behind, but there's a very real side effect, I think, to the perception of them being behind. And they, like I talked about stickiness earlier, they're a company that could suffer greatly, very quickly, in a way that Microsoft never did, if something better comes along, right?
Yeah,
70-something%.
In the end, it's a one product company.
Yep. Yes. Yes.
And by the way, that's something appears
to
to have come along, and we've had several threats to it, but this one's pretty compelling.
This one's, yeah, exactly. So, we kind of ran through a couple of those reasons why, businesses have kind of stuck with Windows over the years. I mean, Google does not have this advantage when it comes to, especially search, which is, tied directly to that 70% of their income thing. So, this human sounding AI thing, laughing and joking and singing and handling interruptions with ease, has got to, although, by the way, Google showed off a lot of stuff very similar to this, right? 24 hours later, OpenAI is riding kind of a PR wave that I think is not benefiting Google in the slightest. And I think they would have done better maybe toning it down a bit.
What do you think of the Windows Weekly podcast featuring Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell?
Windows Weekly is a popular podcast, especially if you're into Microsoft and Windows news. Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell are both knowledgeable and provide in-depth insights. They have a good dynamic, mixing expertise with a bit of humor. Do you listen to it regularly?
I do. What do you think of Richard's whiskey recommendations?
Richard's whiskey recommendations are usually spot on. He seems to have a great palate and knows his stuff. Have you tried any of his suggestions?
I'm afraid I've tried a few too many of his suggestions.
Haha, I can imagine. He does make those recommendations sound pretty tempting. Do you have a favorite whiskey from his list?
She's real big on asking questions.
Is that Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah, that's what I thought. This is a 4.0, which
no wonder they're calling it her. Like it's just a straight rip off of the movie.
And now I don't have the perky ScarJo that they used in the demo, but I think this one's okay. I probably could make it so you can customize it with some, previous prompts. I think they beat Google.
Yeah,
I've been using
yeah.
Gemini.
All right.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you, Paul. Please go ahead. I'll stand down.
I don't even know. I don't know.
I just wanted to talk to her, and she likes you. She really does.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you like her?
I feel like that seemed fake.
Really?
To me. Yeah. It's almost like she's not a person and doesn't actually know anything about Windows.
She's not.
But
you know what? She's not.
I'm projecting.
Yeah.
She's not.
I think we could call it Eliza 2.0 because it just kicks the question back to you. Essentially, it's very Rogerian.
Yeah. It's the way a future, what do you call it? A palm reader works. Like, asks insightful questions, and it's like, oh my God, they know me.
Mm-hmm.
Is there someone named Bob in your life?
It is better than that.
No, of course it isn't. I'm just joking, but but it isn't in a way, because I don't know, the way that went down was just like.
Let me ask you
something on your mind, Leo?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the latest version of Windows 11 is. Because you can ask her questions. She's thinking. That's that sound. She clicks when she thinks.
This version includes various improvements and new features, such as enhancements to the Microsoft Copilot, which now supports more commands and can be undocked to move around like any other app window. Additionally,
that's not available.
There have been updates
Right, so
to File Explorer,
that's not
quick settings, and phone link capabilities.
Yep.
This version is expected to launch later this year.
Later. Okay, that's true.
What about widgets?
In the latest updates to Windows 11, Microsoft has made several enhancements to widgets. For example, the Start menu update includes the ability to display widgets on either side of the interface. This change is part of a broader effort to make widgets more integrated and accessible across the Windows environment. Additionally, the Quick Settings panel has been updated to support more customization.
Anyway, I don't have to go on, but you see that it is more than just Rogerian psychoanalysis here. I mean, there's actually information she's offering. Because it can search the web now and stuff like that. Also, you notice how much faster it is. That's the big improvement. You can almost have a conversation with it.
Yeah, and it was tripping out to the cloud to do that. So it was a pretty good trip.
Yeah,
quick trip.
Anyway, sorry. Should I ask it about the Edmonton Oilers? No,
Please don't.
No.
Nope,
not gonna do it. Mm-mm.
Anyway, Google had their thing. Actually, they're still having their thing. They just announced some stuff right before we started the show. I don't know what to say other than they're doing everything, and I'm not sure if it matters.
I know it feels like a race. I'm glad to see the nano versions and that term becoming popular. Microsoft's got one now. Google's got one. What
are they?
This is how products, they're versions that will run in the phone. Remember, we were having this conversation a year ago about how big LLMs are. And it's like, we're going to be dependent on the cloud until they figure out how to make a smaller one. Well, here we are a year later, and they've got it down to something small enough that it can run in a top tier smartphone, which is, of course, by any metric, a supercomputer.
Right. Which is why also this next generation of phones, we've seen rumors about this for Pixel and iPhone. It will happen to Samsung, obviously, are going to have a lot more RAM than before, right? This has suddenly become an explosive need on the phone because of these LLMs.
Yeah, I'm expecting phones to get a lot warmer. Those GPUs are fine because you don't use them much, but you're about to.
Yep. We're also going to see Gemini Nano in Google Chrome on the desktop, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
And they didn't talk about this too much at the show, but I actually talked to Google ahead of the show, and I asked about this explicitly. And they're working with their partners in Chromium, including Microsoft. They're also working with other browser makers like Mozilla and Apple to make sure that there's basically a standard for how AI works locally in web browsers, right? And they did not say it this way, but the way I took it, well, they did say explicitly based on WebGL and WASM, WebAssembly. And then the part they didn't say explicitly, and this is my opinion or my educated guess, is, Google will have Gemini Nano, of course, in their browser. Microsoft, of course, will have whatever local LLM. They would be smart to think about a rebranding there. Call it Copilot something, Copilot Nano, perhaps. Just for that kind of a effect. Apple's going to do what they're going to announce next month, whatever that is, and we'll have all these browsers that running on devices that have NPUs and can have multiple LLMs in many cases, right? Installed locally, and you as the user maybe, or the platform maker, whoever, will decide what you get. But maybe you just decide based on the browser you choose.
Yeah,
right?
just
So
like
if you're
you,
Chrome,
sometimes some folks will pop up with 3 different search engines and run the same search term. It just, I always look at the LLM's approach to finding out information, like hitting the "I'm feeling lucky" button on the Google homepage, right? Because it just gives you an answer.
Yep.
And it gives it to you confidently, right? Accuracy
Yeah.
is secondary to that point. And so what's the workaround to that? Well, let's run more than one.
Yeah. I mean, I look at this more of this kind of hybrid approach is Google's been very explicit about this in the past with the AI features that are on their phones, but we're going to see a lot of this. We're going to see this, I think, next week with Microsoft and Windows.
Yeah.
There'll be specific workloads, what are their tasks that run locally, and then there are going to be these hybrid instances like Leo just did with ChatGPT, where it's actually going up to the cloud for information. And they'll combine them in whatever way makes the most sense, depending on what it is you're doing.
And notice that, once upon a time we were talking about how Google wasn't jumping into this, wasn't leading this because it impaired their primary revenue stream, what was showing ads on the Google search page. And now they are jumping into it because even only getting a single search is better than no search at all.
Yeah. And actually, anyone who uses Google search will know, because you see it all the time, that they're doing AI summaries right at the top. I mean, a lot of times you just want that answer. Look, I didn't want you to give me work. I wanted you to give me the answer, right? You spend a lot of time, control clicking on links in a Google search result.
Because we have a habit of looking for accuracy. And so we look at multiple results and correlate for accuracy.
Right. That's right.
Now we're heading over a tool that is clearly identified that accuracy is not important.
I'm going to make something up here, but you have like a particular Fitbit, and you want to configure a particular feature, and you Google search that thing, and you're explicit. I have a Fitbit Charge 6. I want to, whatever it is, turn off this feature. If you go through the search results, aside from the annoyances, like the top 3 results are videos, which is not what I want. I want text, and there's no way to configure that. You get into a point where you dive into stories, and as you're reading it, you realize they're talking about a different Fitbit. Or they're talking about a different feature. And the AI, unfortunately, is informed by this same problem, right? And so they'll read it off as an answer with, no sense of humility whatsoever. And you think, well, that must be it. And when that's not it, because that feature doesn't exist or the interface is different, you're on your own, right? And so this is
and to be clear, software has no humility. That's not a thing.
Well, I should have said with great confidence. Maybe was the better way to put it.
Yeah. Using confident language that it doesn't actually understand.
So what do you think about this, though? So we have 2 companies that dominate mobile. We have mobile dominating personal computing.
Yes.
What's Microsoft's role here, other than on the PC? Like, what can they do?
Yeah, no, you're right that, and now you see them making moves with alternatives to OpenAI. Like, do they have to own the source?
What does that look like for an app? In other words, you're an app maker. It could be anything. It doesn't matter what you do. Maybe you make images or something, right? And you're like, I'm going to make an app for the iPhone. Apple's going to have something. Do you use that? Or what's the value proposition for going with the Microsoft solution?
I think Microsoft's pretty happy with the shovel roll that they have. Yeah. OpenAI runs on Azure.
The back end,
right?
The plumbing part or whatever. Yeah.
So they can I don't think they feel like they have an existential threat on the front end.
Yep.
They're definitely trying to play because they should. And they're happily, do you see any threats to M365 Copilot? Like, where's Google in the doc side of the equation on this? Like,
so they announced that. So my central complaint about the Google I/O was that the first 30 to 40 minutes should have been, and by the way, I pointed this out in an article I wrote this morning. 1 hour and 51 minutes into a 1 hour and 52-minute keynote presentation. Google CEO Sundar Pichai said, we have 15 products that all have over 500 million users each. And every one of them is getting better because of AI. Here's an idea, Sundar. That should have been the opening line of your keynote. And the next 30 minutes should have been you showing off those features, right? So Gmail and Google Workspace and Docs and all that stuff is getting the same kind of a Copilot pane on the side that will do all the AI whatchamajigs that
They
we
just
get.
didn't bother to tell us.
It's out there. I mean, it's in there are screenshots and and blog posts and they talk about it. But yeah,
now
my
you're talking
point
about
is
the
you should
culture
have
of
led
Google.
with this.
Yeah.
This was you leading, right?
If you're coming after Microsoft in a way that matters to Microsoft, right? If you're going to try, but the thing is, are you Google an enterprise company or are you Google a consumer company?
So I'm not contradicting what I said earlier, but but in the sense that I know that this contradicts what I said earlier, I will just say this. Companies or people pay for Microsoft 365, and that is whatever cost it is per user, per month, per year, whatever it is. The cost of Copilot on top of that is astronomical. I'm not saying it's not worth it, but it is extremely expensive, right? And what if there was, because there will be, these ad hoc solutions? I was saying most, like you said, you want to strangle a neck or whatever. But what if you could save 67% or whatever it is by going with a third-party AI that you plug in, because it's, these Office apps and Microsoft 365 are extensible, and you choose OpenAI chat something, or you choose the Anthropic something, or some Grammarly suite that's coming, or whatever it is. And that in some ways is a threat to Microsoft, right? Because that is a potential world in which the growth slows dramatically, maybe.
Yeah, no, and I think the
the
advantage of owning the front end is having more control over where the pipeline goes. I think they've got the back end advantage of an awful lot of this stuff runs on Azure, and they have done very well in terms of cornering the compute resources for operating a lot of these things. They should not give up the front end. Like they've got to go.
I agree. I'm just curious. I mean, and I know they have today little on-device models, and I was kind of suggesting maybe what they should have is one they call Copilot something, whatever. That's just branding, but I'm just curious. I mean, in my own little world, and I have a very narrow view of how I might use AI because of the narrow way that I work, right? But you could install a Grammarly client on desktop that works in any app that has text. You can do it. There's a language tool version, which I actually prefer, but whatever. And that means you could use a text editor. You could use a LibreOffice writer, which maybe hasn't had spelling or grammar checking updated in 10 years. For all I know, who cares? It won't matter because there's this outside service that in many cases is free and just does it for you. So the how do I say this?
I mean, the problem is they aren't free. Somebody does have to pay for them.
Okay.
Because they are computationally intensive.
Yeah. But the threat to paid Microsoft Copilot or whatever is cheaper AI, because the problem about AI, like as we keep saying, is AI is not a big bucket killer app. It's a million things in a million places.
And it begs the question, like, how long does this stay $30 a month? Right. I think they put that price out there to anchor and to get people to think that way and to get as many customers as possible. I think it was a total race. Remember, this product is an accident.
No, I understand. But do you actually believe that the price is going to go down, or do you think the amount of features will go up exponentially and the price is the same?
Look at what happened to the pricing of cloud. They slashed the price of cloud, and then people bought and spent more to the point where now they can't really cut the price anymore. People have to optimize.
Just talked about stickiness. I mean, I don't mean to argue the point, but it's more like an open question. I mean, there is a stickiness associated with cloud storage because now your stuff is there. If you're, I'm limiting this to a very specific use case, but if I'm worried about spelling and grammar checking, and I'm like, well, Grammarly is not doing it for me anymore, I'm going to switch to this other tool. It's not very sticky. It's easy to do that.
Yeah, especially when they're independent like that, as opposed to integrated the product. And I would point out, Microsoft is clearly concerned about doing a better job on the consumer space, which is why they've got the DeepMind guys, and are trying to do a separate consumer play. Not that we've seen anything yet. Maybe next week. I doubt it, but I don't know for sure.
That's going to take some time, right? I mean,
I think so. I think it's going to be a year.
I mean, you shouldn't expect, and I don't mean you, Richard. I mean, no one should expect an immediate turnaround on that.
I really look at this and go, hey, this feels like the HTML5 races again. When IE9 and Chrome going back and forth, which by the way benefited the entire system. Right? Like JavaScript grew up as a language because of that duel. Not that, JavaScript is all that in sliced bread, but it is a lingua franca of the web, and it does run outside the browser pretty darn well these days. It has its own problems, like
even
most
Microsoft
languages
has
do.
contributed to its quality.
Absolutely. So
through TypeScript and so on.
If this is the shape, the shape of the thing I took away from Google is, okay, they're all on this. They want to compete. They're no longer holding back, trying to defend their turf. And we're going to benefit because it makes both companies have to get better. I am very concerned when one tech giant believes they are dominating a stack like this because they don't get efficient.
I do think Google is kind of operating from a defensive position in a sense, whether that's real.
Well, and the biggest proof is that keynote. If you were feeling confident,
I know,
you'd go after the other guy. The story you told of the 15 apps, so forth, that is, I'm feeling confident to go punch Microsoft where it counts in the enterprise.
Everyone was asleep by the time he said that.
Yeah,
that should have been right up front. And
it's just proof that they're not confident. They're defending their turf first and then talking about maybe we can go on the offensive.
I agree. Yeah, so Microsoft's event's going to be very interesting. I got to say, the Google I/O thing this year, and maybe not just this year, but this year specifically, felt very much like Build. The same kind of. This could have been shorter, could have been more concise, could have more targeted. It's a
just a reminder that Google is a big company with big company politics.
Well, if you didn't believe that, watch yesterday's keynote.
Look at how much flack they took last year for no Android, and so Android's in, but it's day 2.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a certain confidence to Android in the sense that this thing has, 4 billion users or something. I mean, it's like,
sorry, I didn't have time for a keynote. I was too busy selling product.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't have too much time to describe the air that you all take for granted, but we're talking about this other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Build's going to be interesting. I think Apple WWDC is going to be particularly interesting.
Yeah. I don't know that they're ready yet either.
That's why there's a sense, we'll see what next week looks like, but these shows always come down to the wire, as you know, better than anybody, from the people who are presenting and the topics. And I know last year at, actually this was at Ignite, I was talking to someone about all the, from Microsoft, about all the co-pilots. And they were saying up until like 10 PM last night, there was going to be another one. And someone on our team said, guys, we're 9 months into this. These two things are the same. We're not really going to announce 2, right? We're going to do 1. And they pulled one at the last second because, they were right. But you get into kind of a frenzy, I think.
No, this is how you get things like the side. Remember the sidekick?
Yeah.
There's your frenzy. We're so worried about mobile. We actually have competing teams and they both release.
Yeah. It's like, ew.
Yeah. Now you get to clean that mess up in public. So, I mean, it's good that they're starting to rationalize. And that was always my concern with this whole thing. It's like, you guys are going too fast and you're going to make the situation worse.
Yeah, exactly right. So like I said, I'm Microsoft focused, obviously, but I pay a lot of attention to Google and to Apple and all of this stuff. And this is a particularly fascinating year for this because
we're clearly leading into your Apple story. I am fascinated with how angry was Tim Cook to create that meeting that killed, like they missed the AI wave.
That story, which is based on the story he's referring to, is based on multiple sources, but essentially Craig Federighi and one of the other top level executives looked at ChatGPT-4 it would have been 2023. So that had come out, remember, in November 2022.
22, yeah.
Yeah. And we're shocked by how high quality it was and how it obsoleted instantly Siri, a service, by the way, Apple ignored for a decade plus. But okay, fair enough. I don't know why it took that to make them realize that there was something horribly wrong, but fair enough. But literally, Apple leadership came to understand this as an existential threat, that if other companies do AI and we don't, it's the same thing. It's the same reason they went after game streaming services. We have this hardware that is awesome and we sell the hardware because you need it to do, in this case, play games. And if you sell a service that plays games over the internet and our hardware doesn't matter, no one's going to pay a premium for it because they can play these games anywhere. It's kind of a cycle that could lead to their downfall. And they realized that AI was the same thing. And they they had a reorg that they never discussed publicly. And as part of that, they killed this self-driving program and they put a lot of those engineers on AI.
Yeah.
And that was a year ago, February.
That was probably their best AI people working on arguably an so far unsolvable problem.
Yes. How would you like to do something that will ship next year instead of something that may never ship?
Totally.
How does that sound? Well, it doesn't matter how it sounds because you're doing it.
Yeah,
or you
because this is what we need.
We need this now. So,
well, and especially if they were looking at it from the ChatGPT point of view, it's like this is the new UX, and we built this company's fortunes are built on a UX of a phone that defined an industry, and now we're about to be disrupted.
Yeah, and the component like, okay, look, that it's not hard to imagine Siri being more sophisticated, right? It's ridiculously inept. But you look, and it's not hard to imagine the thing I described for Google, them and Microsoft will describe in Windows and apps and stuff, and Apple will, our Photos app will get better like this, our camera app will get better like this, our chat app will do this, or you can see it, like it's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. But the big thing to me is Google just paid them $20 billion or whatever last year to be default search.
Yeah,
I got to think that's up in the air.
Yeah.
So.
Now we'll swap that over for a different product if you can get it ready in time, or we'll make it.
I think,
although
I think it's
Apple doesn't have the back end for this. They don't.
I know, but it's
and they're easily 10 years away from having it. Like it's not that easy to build out the infrastructure you're talking about.
Right.
Again, Microsoft is lucky that they were in the right place at the right time. Although, admittedly, like Kevin Stott was sent on the mission to go get workloads. He just happened to get the right one.
I mean, Apple has one advantage over most of the planet, which is that they have a near infinite number of dollars.
Yeah. And they have the UX.
And they have a steady income stream.
Yeah.
A bad quarter for Apple, like last quarter was like, they didn't do it. They're kicking ass. Like, I mean, they're doing great. So you have to kind of put it.
They're a multi-trillion business for a reason.
Yeah. So anyway, they're the wild card. I'm fascinated to see what they come up with, because the Google stuff, you're like, this makes sense. Like,
but
this is what you do.
Well, now you talk about the culture there. It's like Cook is not familiar with chasing. Cook came into a company was part of making that company on top, and that's been his life. I'm glad he's afraid.
Into the company, they were still, it was Mac OS 10, right? And iPod, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, but they were,
no, he was part of what meant putting them on top. And the question now is, now that he faces what I think he perceives as an existential threat, can he respond? Can he chase? Does he know how?
Yeah, we're going to see whether he can be as decisive as Satya Nadella was with the AI stuff. And say, no, we're doing this. We'll see. I can't, like I said, I can't wait. I can't wait.
No,
I think,
and all in all, like this looks so good for the industry, for us, and for the industry as a whole.
Yeah,
because it is moving forward. We have been somewhat stagnant.
Oh my God!
The keyboard, but screen, keyboard, mouse touches a variation on mouse has been pretty much the same for quite a while.
Phones have been the same since 2007.
Pretty much.
The web has been the same since Chrome. I mean, across the board.
And cloud's been just a replacement web approach. And now we're starting to get diversity, like computing, unique computing resources is a diversity element to it that opens up new possibilities. You don't get the large scale LLM revolution without cloud. And that's probably the first time you can really say that. Cloud's been replacing existing infrastructure for quite some time. Once upon a time, I signed contracts with Akamai for CDN services for performance and endpoints and stuff. Now you just position in the cloud. Like that's just been evolving. But this is a product that only emerged the way it did because the cloud infrastructure was already there and got repurposed.
Yeah, and there are only 3 companies on Earth that could even do this. I mean, maybe 4. But
it would be very tough to start now.
Right.
And that's largely what you're talking about Apple needing to do.
Right. Well,
I
can't. I'm just going to say the same thing.
If they're going to go racing after these guys,
I cannot wait. I also want to read about what didn't happen. Right.
Look, they bailed on maps and they bailed on search. They can bail on building their own LLM.
Yeah.
Or they can be the ones who focus solely on the client side LLM.
There is going to be a race on the client side, and it's going to be interesting to see which combinations come out as being better for different workloads or whatever. we talked about this just in the context of Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm all having their own little MPU implementations on Windows.
Yeah.
And what we're going to find over different generations, what's going to go up and down, but some of them are going to be awesome for this. Some of them are going to be awesome for this. And eventually, well, I'm sure it will even out in time, but Apple does have they have a years long head start in the client MPU space for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and they own the hardware. Like that, they got tools. Yeah. They do not have a worldwide collection of massive data centers. Well, and so hopefully they won't try and build one. That seems foolish.
Yeah.
So I just fill you in from the other side of the aisle because we talk about this a lot. Apple, there were strong rumors that Apple was actually going to build their own AI PC for data centers. They do have data centers, but they also use AWS and Azure, as you know. They also hired John Giannandrea away from Google, who was one of their big AI guys. He's in charge of AI now at Apple. The thing about Apple we never know is what are they doing inside? They may have been developing AI solutions for 10 years.
You would have told
we wouldn't
this
know.
Story would have been when Apple started their self-driving car efforts. There would have been stories about Apple hired some expert from.
They did. They hired a ton of people from Tesla.
Right? Of course they did. That's what I mean. Like they
did.
Like,
they hired a guy from Waymo. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what happens, right? So, yeah, we'll see.
It occurs to me because literally in the past less than a day, Susquevar has announced leaving OpenAI. Where do you think he's going?
Yeah.
Right.
Where do you think he's going?
The other side
who would make him the largest offer?
Is, as you know, Apple is apparently very close, the rumor says, to a deal with OpenAI and has also been talking to Google. So it's perfectly possible that Apple will avoid this whole safety conundrum. You know, Google's gotten some spots on their escutcheon because of that.
You gotta have something on the end that's preventing
Siri.
us too, right?
You could have Siri as a front end. By the way, they didn't develop Siri in-house. They acquired it.
Yeah, it was acquired.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they could easily, I think, take Siri and plug it into. I would love to see him, in fact, plug him into the OpenAI 4.0.
I think that's exactly what it's going to be.
That's what I think. That's what I'm doing with an iPhone. I press the action button.
When you hear that woman's voice, whether it was at the OpenAI event Monday or on your phone or whatever. It's hard not. You think it's like that's Siri, isn't it? Is it literally the same woman? Like
it's Scarlett Johansson. It's a fake Scarlett. And by the way,
but it sounds
shortly after I did that demo, Sam Altman tweeted, "Oh, we don't have the new cutesy voice in yet. Wait till you hear it." So the voice we heard at the demo is not the voice you're hearing. It sounds like ScarJo.
It's not the natural voice.
And I've been trying really hard to get her to be like I asked her to do it as a Valley girl.
That would.
Can you recommend a good whiskey, but do it in a perky Valley girl voice?
Oh my gosh, like you have to try Woodford Reserve. It's totally amazing. It's like super smooth with these yummy vanilla and caramel vibes. Plus, it's so classy. Trust me, you'll love it.
See, we don't need you anymore, Richard. You can.
Clearly. Oh, my God.
Well, actually, the problem was we don't need anybody anymore. Like we don't need Google anymore. Oh, my God.
But that's still not the perky voice that we heard in the demo. Imagine that as Siri.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not hard. You can see it coming.
So I think here's always the problem with Apple. We have no idea because it's an opaque box and we're just guessing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who knows what they've got.
And that's why it's so fascinating. So they're going to come out and they're either going to excite or disappoint, something in between, whatever it is. And then there are going to be the Mark Gurman stories or whatever, where they're like, oh, they were right in the cusp of,
exactly.
The last minute they said no to this thing. And, and we'll see what happens. I'm fascinated by it.
I love it that we got a race and everybody should be competing their butts off. And there's also Anthropic and Perplexity. There's all these other companies.
Right. That's right.
And many companies are building on top of OpenAI.
That's right.
Or
exactly.
In fact, that's one of the things Google announced yesterday is they really want to make Gemini more palatable for developers.
Mm-hmm. When it looked like Sony was going to use Microsoft's, I guess it was Azure, I guess, for their cloud service, right? The conversation then was, Microsoft could still win by losing, right? And companies like OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, I guess, could win by losing. In other words, there's not an Alexa logo on something, there's not a Google logo on something or whatever it is, but whatever wins, or so to speak, is running on their infrastructure in the back end, they're still going to be okay.
And don't leave Meta out of the game. They've got an open source solution that I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's great. It's a horse race. It's just what you want. You were bemoaning the fact that tech got boring after the iPhone. Well, this is everything we've been asking for.
Yeah. It's back.
And it's a little scary.
Cracked it crazy.
It's a little scary.
It's scary because it came out of nowhere. Companies like Microsoft and Google have been kind of talking about AI for so long. It turned into like spell check. Like, this is not very interesting. The OpenAI stuff, ChatGPT 4 Plus.
I was doing the software development in challenging times keynote, in 2022, and saying, you should probably shelve your AI projects because you got to focus on things that are going to have immediate return.
Yeah. There you go.
Whoops.
Yep.
This
is like, this is like when people like, oh man, like Microsoft didn't respond well to the iPhone, Nobody did.
Nobody did. Right? It was a 2G phone. It was terrible.
There were companies that did only that.
Yeah.
Nokia, Palm, Motorola, whatever, RIM. Like my phone was a tiny part of Microsoft. There were companies that only did this and didn't see this coming and didn't respond properly. I mean, this stuff is disruptive, Yeah.
These are black swan events.
Yeah.
The thing that is really interesting, we talked about this yesterday on the Google I/O show. And this was Alex Kantrowitz, a big technology podcast and blog. The really interesting play for this is moving from the phone to the glasses or the earbuds or something. And I think we're very close. We're the year or two off from. I'm not talking HoloLens. I'm not talking Vision Pro. From what you're wearing right now, Richard, with a heads-up display earpiece. It's hearing what you're saying. It's seeing what you're looking at, and it's whispering in your ear. And I think I can't wait for that. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, presumably is at least in a tethered model where may or may not be maybe local wireless or wired.
The Meta glasses are not, or did they do their thing?
Yeah, just put the sensors on the glasses, put the compute down in the pocket.
Maybe, we'll see.
At first, eventually, you'll be embedded in your skin. I mean, you'll be a cyborg full of sensors.
Look, as soon as you get upset because you've left your phone somewhere, like you lost a limb, you are a cyborg. You have a digital extension of yourself.
Well, that's all of us now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. You keep it on the outside of your body because where's
my phone?
And
it used to be my wallet, right?
Syndrome
I used to pat my pants for my wallet. Now it's my phone. I don't even know where my wallet is. Who needs a wallet? I got a phone.
Yeah.
Well, I live in Pennsylvania, so unfortunately, I do need a wallet for right now. But I'm with you.
Out here in the 21st century, we just use our watches to pay for everything.
Yeah.
Look, from here, California is just a shining light on a hill, Leo. I can't even imagine what this utopia is like, but we'll get there.
You'll get there. Cash is still king in Central PA.
I literally had someone from Pennsylvania forwarded something from a business in Pennsylvania that was literally like, we got to bring cash back because when we use cash, the bank doesn't get any money.
Private.
Credit cards don't get any money.
Private.
There's all kinds of
government don't get into it there.
I have an idea. Why don't we go back to the barter system?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're a step back away from barter.
I'll grow sweet potatoes, and you can give me like a computer.
Yeah. I got a couple of chickens in the back of the truck now. It's the only way I get to buy mushrooms.
Yeah,
I had to write a check the other day. And I really couldn't remember exactly.
Right.
What do you put on these things?
I can't get through writing a check without my hand cramping up. That's how bad I write. I gave it to the guy. Could type better than anybody, but when it comes to writing.
Does this look right? If I did anything wrong, tell me. He said, no, I think that's
and
okay.
they're like, well, if one thing gets upside down.
Lisa did.
Usually we put that information on the front of the check.
Lisa wrote the wrong date on it. At least I got the year. It's pretty funny.
I had someone tell me one time I couldn't write a check with a red pen.
That used to be the case, right?
I listen. I used to work in banking. I know nothing is universal, but all these things that people think are real,
it's not true.
Just don't exist.
Oh.
It's just like, that's what everyone says. Like Mama Cass was killed by eating a sandwich. It never happened. But you know what? The story's fun. I get it.
Well, one thing that is true, and I think, Richard, you kind of nailed it, is this stuff sneaks up on you. And it's hard to know what's going to be next.
That's right.
And anytime you make a prediction in tech, you're running.
It's not even,
risk.
It's not even a prediction. It's like a something will come out. Like an iPad is a good example. Apple Watch is a good example. And, or actually the iPhone maybe be the ultimate example, because there were people who were like, nope, not going to do it. You need a keyboard, whatever it is, and you're not even confronted by the future. Sometimes you don't see it, So it's bad enough trying to predict what's going to happen in the future, but someone announces something.
And when the future arrives, you look and go, nope.
And you're just like, nope, I'm on the back of the pickup truck. I'm doing great. You're like, you're going to run out of gas. I don't know. So, and I'm not pointing fingers at other people. I'm doing the same thing. I'm including myself in this. This is it. We all do this.
Well, today's the new iPad. We will have new iPads coming up in a bit on MacBreak Weekly. Jason Snell has his.
Sure.
John Slanina has his. I'm waiting. I'm looking. I'm watching my Nest Cam with eagle eyes, waiting for the UPS man to come.
Wow. Okay. So just real quick, last item in the AI list. It's only semi-AI related. ARM announced their revenues. You remember this company has only been public for a little while, so
doesn't make anything
records every quarter. They almost had $1 billion in revenue. They're getting there. Revenue's up 47% year over year. That's hilarious. Handily beating expectations. However, their full year forecast was disappointing because I think Wall Street expected ARM to benefit more from this kind of AI wave than they are. So not coincidentally, they announced 2 days later, we're going to make AI chips. So, but the best thing to me about ARM is just their what do you call it? Their margins. ARM's margins are, let me find this exact figure. It's so beautiful. Why can't I find it? I want to say their margins are 97%. And the reason is they don't have any overhead at all.
Right.
Which is hilarious. Oh, sorry, 96%.
They literally just royalties and licensing. Yep. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, they have like 3 guys working in a corner office. One guy's got a drafting board, and that's their whole business. It's hilarious. So, yeah, 96% margin. So take that, Apple.
Well, I'm just glad they're on top of the spatial computing revolution.
Okay. Is it a revolution?
Is it a revolution? Is it going to be a revolution?
It'll be part of the history once the future is written.
Yes. And then there was this thing called Vision Pro.
I mean, there was a slow boil thing called VR that happened over 30 years and it never happened.
Never happened.
I don't even. What do you call that?
Yeah. Well, the same way that the Newton predicated the iPhone. Like you can see the lineage.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think it's a dead end. I think it's a cul-de-sac on the road to the future. It's just a little place somebody turned and said, hey, the GPS says go this way. And then they got there and the bridge was
the
out.
Glasses you were describing or whatever, contact lenses eventually are essentially sort of an AR experience where you have an overlay and information.
Yeah, but that's not what the Vision Pro is. I mean, that's
No, I understand. But I mean, but you could argue that it's a...
Yeah, even Meta's making something different, right?
Yep. I'm not defending Vision Pro. I mean, I don't want to put myself in. I don't know why you guys hate Apple so much here at Twitch, but let me set you straight.
I love have I mentioned my HP? I love this.
Yeah, beautiful machine.
It is very pretty. Let's take a break. Yeah. We'll come back and we have lots more to discuss. So I think you better come to the office, and the vice principal will be seeing you in a moment. But first, a word from our sponsor. Actually, learning does not have to be like that anymore. Thanks to our good friends at ACI Learning, the people who provide you with IT Pro training, binge-worthy, video-on-demand IT and cybersecurity training. Nobody does it better. It's the best. And with IT Pro, you get certification ready with access to their full video library. The number keeps growing now, 7,250 hours of training. And this is current training because they've got 7 studios running Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. They're making new training because the tests change, the software changes, version changes. They always want to get it better. So when you talk 7,250 hours of training, that's not dusty old training from last year. This is the hot new stuff. Premium training plans don't only include all those hours of video training, they also include practice tests. There is no better way to prepare for any exam than practice tests. Take the exam before you pay for them, and then you'll get your cert. It's kind of almost like, wow, I'm ready now. I feel good. There's also virtual labs, which facilitate hands-on learning. You can have a Windows server in your HTML5 browser and all the clients. You don't need to have all that hardware. You don't need to have to go on site even to get it. You can have it remotely, which is great. It's also great for MSPs who like to try stuff before they actually put it into production. ACI Learning IT Pro. They make training fun. All the videos are produced by experts in the field whose passion really communicates. It's an engaging talk show format that's really, well, they call it edutaining. Take your IT or cyber career to the next level. Be bold, train smart with ACI Learning. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit. The code TWIT30 gets you 30% off your first month or first year of IT Pro training. That's go.acilearning.com/twit. Use the code TWIT30, TWIT30, if you want to get 30% off your first month or first year of training. That's a pretty good deal. Go.acilearning.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. On the show goes, what's next on your agenda, Mr. Thurrott?
We have a ton, like a metric ton of Xbox.
Oh, yay!
Yeah, it's been a curiously momentous week, and it's only Wednesday.
It's all the Blizzard
going
stuff,
on.
right? It's all about the Blizzard.
Oh, all those Blizzard's games that are finally coming to Game Pass. Isn't this exciting, Richard?
I hate you
I'm
both.
very excited.
And I wish that was happening. We'll get to that. So Microsoft revealed last week that they were going to open a web-based mobile game store to take on Apple and Google, sort of. There's not a lot of information. There was no official announcement. This was mentioned by Sarah Bond, Xbox president, at a Bloomberg event. So we have questions. So I guess putting it on the web puts it outside of the App Store fees system. But some of the language kind of suggests, is this like just about in-game purchases? Are you actually going to have full-blown games? It is going to be first-party stuff at first, and then they're going to pull in third parties eventually. So we still have questions here, but we've been wondering since the DMA stuff has been happening in the EU, when or if Microsoft would finally do something like this. And I don't think this is exactly what we expected, but we'll see. So that's interesting, whatever it is. Let's see. There's so many. This is a statement on the world that we live in. Just briefly, because I know I've told the story, but in 2004 or 2005, I went out to the Microsoft campus and I saw what was the Xbox 360 development stations, which were two giant Mac G5 towers next to each other, tethered together somehow with this wire that came out to an Xbox controller. And I was like, they had just announced what the Xbox 360 was going to look like, this little white thing. And I was like, how are you going to fit that in there? And they're like, oh, we got guys working on that. Right. So obviously that worked out great. There was no red ring of death problem or anything like that. But the other thing I learned that day was that Xbox 360 was going to be the first Xbox console that would allow games to release updates at any time. And like blurted up, my knee-jerk reaction was, but wait, aren't you worried that will reduce the quality of games, because they know they'll be able to update? And I think it was Aaron Grayberg said, no, it wasn't. I'm sorry. No, it wasn't Aaron. Sorry, it was someone else. But he said, no, we're not worried. We have a system in place. It's going to be fine. Now, if you're an Xbox user today, or probably any other console, but I only really know the Xbox, you know what it's like, right? Not only do game makers ship updates all the time, they ship stupid, huge updates, often on day one, right?
And it's Steam too, as you, Richard, right?
It's probably
it's
everywhere.
It's PCs too.
Probably everybody.
But this isn't specific to games. All software now is shipped incomplete.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Broken,
no, I'm just, but the appeal of the console is this kind of combination of simplicity and ease of use, and
I think you're begging for the right DVD amount of to come back. Kind of thing. You want the DVD
Yeah.
back, don't you? You miss your DVD.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not a big fan of optical media, but so look, as someone who has bought every one of every Call of Duty games, I know the last several, you spend time preloading it, and then the day comes, and then you spend time reloading it because the day one update is bigger than the original game. Like it happens every single time. And then there are multiple updates over time. So, you finally get that Friday afternoon, you get a kickback, play games for a little while, turn the console on. Sorry, we got to install an update for your game. Seriously.
That was always the running gag, right? You turn on your Xbox 2 hours before you want to use it.
Yeah. Or this is actually a setting that supposedly will keep it on at a low level and do those downloads, right? I mean, they do have that. So to solve this problem, Microsoft is going to institute a policy for quality. I'm just kidding. What they're going to do is allow gamers to pre-download updates, right? So now not only are you going to preload the game, but you can preload the update. So the day the update comes out, there might be a diff download that you have to do, but hopefully you won't suffer from this problem I just described, where you're sitting there for several minutes, an hour, whatever it is.
Now you're the CDN hosting your patches ahead of your software.
It's incredible. But you know what? As stupid as it is, it's still sort of
it might actually help you get to play your new game soon.
Yeah, it's a brute force approach. It's inelegant, but you know what?
I would also argue this, Paul. It's easier on their network. Because you do your game release, and the first thing is every single person needs to patch. So you just get absolutely getting hammered there.
Oh my God, yes. Of course.
The patch is coming, so now you get to manage the patch over 24 hours.
That's exactly. Yep, you can meter it out. Yeah, no, it's. I know it's so unsophisticated. It's hard to argue with, right? Okay, so oh yeah, so the Xbox 360 online store is closing in July, and ahead of that, there's a big sale on digital games, obviously not on discs. But there are over 70 Xbox 360 games on sale for up to, I think it's 80% off. A lot of them are at least 70%. So huge discounts. These games are, God, they're almost 20 years old.
They're old, yeah.
Some of them are.
And the 360 at the time, this was the custom hardware, right? Like this was the whole idea of we're going to build chips specific for gaming. And that's why you had that crazy double Mac thing, because you could emulate.
Yeah, it was PowerPC based.
Yeah, it was PowerPC based. So, and I mean, every game developer, it was now something like a $25,000 commit per rig to be able to develop for the 360. Like the only thing that saved you was that the PS3 did the same stupid thing. Or was the PS2?
PS3 was.
Yeah, but that was the experimentation, right?
Actually,
custom.
Yeah, well, you have custom hardware, right? You can't develop games on a gaming rig PC. You have,
and then they figured out that was a mistake. Go back to it is just a crippled PC.
Right. Yep. Although, I don't know as much about the Sony side, but Sony is still using their own kind of custom. Well, whoever makes them for them, they're not. I don't believe Sony uses PC type processors, but who cares? I mean, screw Sony, right? Anyhow, so if you look, there were a lot of great Xbox 360 games. Some of them probably play pretty well today too. So anyway, it's something to look at. Alluding to your comments from earlier, yes, there is another round of Game Pass titles for this month, and yes, where are they? None of them are Activision Blizzard titles. And seriously, why does everything in my life?
They are closing down studios faster than they're releasing games.
So, by the way, obviously, I should have put this in the notes. I'll just, since you mentioned it, I'll just throw this out there. I'm gonna talk rough numbers, not actual numbers. Everyone's freaking out over this, right? Everyone is like, Xbox is adrift. The management doesn't know what they're doing. Everyone's freaking out, right? The number of people that Xbox and its associated studios has laid off since January 2023, not this past January, but a year ago January, is approximately, I forget the exact number, but about, I want to say 2,200 people. The amount of people that Microsoft laid off in a 3-month period after they got rid of Nokia was 20,000. So in the scope of things, like this is not on the same level, right?
No.
So
there is a right sizing thing. And the reality, of course, it's not specific to Microsoft.
No. But
lots of gaming companies are doing layoffs.
The complaint that is valid, and I think we should be making, is that they should have handled this better. And that does show. Look, I know it takes time to figure out who's what and who's doing what and whatever, but this purchase went through last October. I don't know. I feel like this could have been like a one big whack kind of a thing. It would have gone down a little bit better. I think when you dribble them out like this, it just makes it seem, it's like, is this thing circling the drain? And it's not, but it's
Well,
just
and I'm
sounds,
of two
it sounds
minds.
bad.
One is it takes time to understand your orgs and figure out
Yeah.
where the dead weight is. There's also how did the reconciliation of of winter sales and how much should we got. You're also collecting your projections for how much
Right.
you're going to spend in the next year and saying what can we do, what can't we do.
Yep.
There's all, and then there's one other piece, and I hate to say that this is true, but how do I also keep my employees from being so comfortable that they start demanding more? And so the occasional layoffs to just put a little dread into them, be happy with what you're getting. You may be the next guy laid off.
That's just,
I hate to say that as a strategy, but I'm running out of excuses.
yeah. I don't remember where I read this, and I looked for this because I wanted to add this to the article I was writing about, but someone was talking about how, we're entering a season where Microsoft has asked these studios to say, okay, what are you working on and when's it going to come out? What do you need? And a lot of them use this as an opportunity to try and bulk up hiring.
Yep.
And so they became indispensable.
And wages raise. They want.
And it was like, wait a minute, what are you doing exactly? And a lot of this stuff was just, they were just sitting there. I don't want to say doing nothing, but a lot of these places weren't really working on anything.
Yeah.
They were just trying to position themselves for something in the future. And it was like, guys, we got to put out games here.
And one of the ways you push back on that en masse is you just do a few layoffs. Just to go now, ask me again what you need for next year.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they did not handle this properly. I want to be super clear.
But I don't know that there's any simple way to do this other than being honest with folks, which just seems to be really unfashionable right now.
Yeah. So for you folks that were excited about the NHL playoffs, EA Sports NHL 24 is one of the games coming to Game Pass starting tomorrow, by the way, across actually a cloud. So
I have a dear friend who's now long retired who used to run that program.
Oh, geez, that's great. Yeah. That's fun. And then the rest of this I don't care about. So there you go. You may recall the drama around Starfield when it launched last year at 30 frames per second on the Xbox Series X, and then the announcement, I don't know, a month or two ago, they were going to release an update. That update is out today, so it does add 60 frames per second and VSync support on Xbox Series X. So, Microsoft's flagship console can now act like a flagship with their flagship game.
Like the way that all the PC people have been experiencing it.
Yeah, right. I know. And probably PlayStation too, right? Or was that, no, sorry, they didn't bring it to PlayStation. Excuse me. That was the other drama with Starfield. Sorry.
What?
It's hard to keep this stuff straight. It would have been 60 though, right? Am I right? Anybody knows. So everybody knows Microsoft has this thing called Xbox Cloud Gaming, game streaming service, formerly Project X Cloud. These games that they're streaming are console games, right? There's actually kind of modified Xbox Series X machines up in the data center. But they've been doing things to make them work better on the types of devices you would stream to, right? So for example, on mobile, a lot of these games have that overlay where you can do the controller. They've made other concessions with the UI where they've actually modified the game so you can actually see the UI on a tiny phone screen, that kind of thing. And today there has been an update that kind of puts it in the reverse direction, which is when you're playing on a PC, they'll support mouse and keyboard input, right? And it's 26 games. It's not the full thing. But if you look at some of these games like Pentiment, which is actually brand new, or Quake 2, which is a first-person shooter that came out first on the PC and would benefit from this kind of interaction. Halo Infinite, another one. Doom 64, which was a Nintendo 64 title originally, but neat. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's cool. I don't think we're ever going to see I shouldn't say never, but you stream Call of Duty from the data center and play it with a mouse and keyboard and compete with people online. We're probably we're probably closer to VR or Vision Pro taking off than we are to that, but you never know. Xbox app on PC. There's been talk about this becoming the interface on handheld gaming PCs, and they just made a new kind of push forward in that direction. They have had something called compact mode for a while, and it's basically just a more efficient way to see this interface on the small screen. And that has been updated, and you can do it's basically just navigational type stuff, but it's I think pointing to a future where you could actually, remember in the old days, you would replace progmen.exe with a different shell or whatever. There might be a shell switch for running Windows on a certain class of device with a smaller screen and different hardware attributes where it's, considered a handheld gaming PC or whatever, and it has a different interface. And it may be the Xbox app. So that's kind of an interesting idea if it happens. Sony just reported their annual report, or annual financial report, which is a fun time for me because they report their numbers in yen because they're from Japan, and I have to do a lot of math, and I love math.
Really big, doesn't it?
But divide by 100, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's close
I
to
do
a
the same
penny.
thing.
It's very close to a penny.
Samsung does, Kwan, obviously, South Korea, and oh God, because you have to do net income, revenue, and then you have to do the percentage difference year over year. You have to do it for different parts of the business. It's horrible. You write a 500-word article and it takes like 3.5 hours. So, long story short, they're doing great. 6.3 billion for the entire company, on revenues of 72 billion for the year. Up 10% year over year. The part that makes PlayStation also doing great. 27.3 billion in revenues in the year, not the quarter. A gain of 14.6% year over year. That part of the company is almost 40% of their total revenues, about 38%. So it's big. They just missed their revised target for the fiscal year. Remember, they had a big plans, and then they had to down tune it because the holidays did not go as well as they expected. But they still sold almost 21 million units in the year of PlayStation 5. And 4.5 million units in the most recent quarter. And they've now sold not quite 60 million units over the lifetime of the product, which puts it not far behind the PlayStation 4, by the way, at the same time in their life cycle, which I don't think a lot of people expected.
No.
I don't think it's going to have the same tail. I think we get that PlayStation 5 Pro this year, and they still had, I don't think
but there's no justification for a PS6, so we've got years to go.
Yeah, we still have years, but it's going to be, I think we're on the downward side of that, that curve there.
I mean, if I was responsible for hardware for video game machines right now, I would be sitting on my hands and waiting for ARM to mature more.
Yeah. So there's, right. We know in the Xbox side, there's a big
chance. If I'm going to actually talk about squeezing $500 or $600 out of somebody again, it better be new, more efficient hardware. And I think NPUs are essential. Like, you see the cusp of hardware change right now. Like, if you look at the cusp of hardware change right now, if you're going to lock someone into a 5-year console, a year from now, it will be dramatically better than it'd be right now.
The issue for PlayStation is that, and they literally announced this, we do not have a major existing franchise title coming out in the next fiscal year. They have no big bang releases coming.
Should we? So have we talked about the Helldivers thing yet? I mean, not that it's really about
last week. Yeah, we mentioned it last week.
Yeah. Just Sony is clearly diversifying. Part of what caused the Helldivers thing is their relationship with Steam. Like, they know they need to do this. They hired Arrowhead Games. Like they're getting into other studios and they're doing other deployments. They're feeling around for how they sustain their market.
Right.
Because what's interesting is they've run their franchises to ground. Where's Final Fantasy?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. We're they don't have it right.
By the way, Paul, I think Scarlett Johansson has something to tell you.
Uh-oh.
Can you tell me Sony's recent financial results in dollars instead of yen?
Oh, I had this conversation with my wife. This is my future.
Sony recently announced their financial results for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2024. The company reported a revenue of approximately $85.4 billion. This represents a significant increase from the previous fiscal year. Net income was around $1.3 billion, showing robust performance across its various segments. For more detailed information, you can visit...
No yen,
story.
Just dollars.
Yeah, no,
the dollar numbers
commented
correct
on this to my wife that they're all correct. We're going to do an AI summarize this in dollar thing pretty soon.
Yeah, they're all correct.
Because these reports are often pages of PDFs of numbers.
What they what they do with this, which is actually quite cool, is they give you references, right? So you can click that.
Yeah,
and open the links.
So I check my math by seeing. Like I'll look at Bloomberg or Reuters because they'll cherry pick a few numbers. But what I found recently, by the way, in last couple of quarters, both those publications, they just report it in yen. They're not doing the math. They're like, I can't.
They need
like, guys, come on.
Need an AI.
Yeah.
I did ask what the exchange rate
is.
is.
It's hard. It's hard now.
And it's now 154.9 yen to a dollar.
Yeah, didn't it say that's just the strength of the U.S. dollar right now?
Yeah.
Didn't ScarJo said 80 billion and
85.4 billion revenue,
where your article was 70.
Net income 1.03 billion. Well, let's. I guess we can go to the source.
Exchange rates are hard.
Sony's official financial report.
Anyway, and where is this thing?
Actually, you know what? She said ending March 31st. Oh, that's right, because that's when the quarter ended.
No, that's correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
And, at least it ends on the end of a month. They don't always.
Just for fun.
Another little bit of fun. The number one downloaded game on Sony in Europe in April was Sea of Thieves, a Microsoft game.
Hey.
Yeah, interesting. So that's kind of cool. I mean, I guess it did well around the world, but that was their high point. Like they're killing it in Europe, just like the Amiga. So nothing's going to go wrong there.
Great comparison.
I think that's fun. Oh, and I should say, I'm sorry, I missed the other one. This is. I'm sorry. Is this the one that's only in Europe? No. This is across the world. Yeah. So in the first quarter, now the numbers I discussed were annual for Sony, but in the quarter, actually I have the figure for Sony in the quarter. For the PlayStation, the number it was less than 5 million, right? It was 4.5 million PlayStation consoles.
Mm-hmm.
According to a report, they outsold Microsoft, meaning Xbox, by over 5-1 in that quarter. So that means that Microsoft sold fewer than 1 million.
Now, how many of those are new customers and how many of those are replacing PS4s or PS3s?
That's a question. I don't know.
And therein lies the battle, right? Like if you're an Xbox household, you're probably already on an X or S by now.
Yeah, right. And I would hope that, by the way, as we're talking, Copilot just launched spontaneously on my computer, which is hilarious. I've never seen that happen before.
Well, you must have hit the context menu button by accident.
Special key.
I am so far from that thing. I don't know what happened. I don't know.
I hit it on purpose all the time.
I'm
really just that way.
Okay. Anyway, Xbox hardware is not doing great. I think that's not a surprise to anybody.
Yeah, so. But the problem is, what would you build now?
Short term, I do think they need that interim little update. Like they're going to do the Pro on this PlayStation side, and we've seen rumors of cylindrical Series X and S.
Yeah, make something pretty.
That's fine.
And just for update the chip,
cost reduce.
Yeah, and a better chip density, so that it's consuming less power and it can make it smaller. You can have more fun with it. But
it looks. But you're right. Long term, you want.
If I'm thinking about game design right now, knowing I have LLMs in my future, knowing I want to do MPU, my generative creations are about to
have this
change.
thing be able to create worlds on the fly as you play.
Yeah.
And have it make sense.
There's No Man's Sky. Like we already have games like that, but
all
games should be like that. Like you're talking about an awful lot of. Again, I'm being a producer here, not a game, necessarily a game developer. How big of our team do I need with generative AI?
We do this, like you said, some single player games do this, but how about a version of Call of Duty where you don't launch with 16 maps? You launch with infinite maps.
Yes,
it's going to be different every time.
And even why make up all your characters in advance? Why isn't everybody's own version of the game generating their own characters?
Right, and they could base it on the people who are playing. They could take a little bits and pieces of your history and in the game and make us special.
I think we're just not that far from an adaptive gaming mindset. Like if you want to take a year off of shipping a new title, spend some money and change the industry, this is it. And I'm hoping, a Gabe Newell who has the Valve guy who has an infinite amount of money. That's one of the totally privately held company, huge amounts of money.
What a John Carmack who has experience with AI and is one of the world's best programmers. I mean,
it's possible that might be exactly what he's doing. We may be blowing Quake out of the water.
Would love that.
Yeah,
I love that so much.
Yeah, but that's you're thinking the right way. It's going to be a Newell or a Carmack who's just going to go it's time to disrupt this thing with this new technology and make a game that is profoundly different.
Well, keep it fresh. That's the biggest problem with these games. It's one of the things that part of the fatigue of Call of Duty was just like the year of sameness.
Yep.
You know, that turned into a decade of sameness.
No, and it's because
I'm still married.
When you're paying 300 to 500 people for a year to put out a title, you can't take any chances. You're spending
with
a lot of money.
Budget of a Hollywood blockbuster movie.
That's right. So you're spending 150 to 250 million dollars to make $1 to $2 billion.
This is perfect storm
and if you
stuff.
don't,
this is better game, lower cost.
Yep.
You know, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
No brainer. Anyway, there you go. So we haven't had this much Xbox news in a long time.
No, it was a lot, and not a bit of Activision in it.
Thank you. That cut so deep. I don't think I'm gonna make it.
No, I have a feeling October is going to be your month, man. October. It's going to be a year.
After I've spent $165 on Game Pass for nothing.
Yeah.
What did I got? What did I get? Like NHL 24 on games on a game. What do you call it? It's cloud gaming. Like, oh, God damn it. Okay. It's okay.
Everything's fine. We're fine. We're fine. I got to tell you, that Helldiver thing made me so happy because the community did so much.
Wasn't that great? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it was a hugely highly rated game on Steam. They made it one of the lowest rated games on Steam. Yeah. And then when Sony backed off, they made it one of the highest rated games. Oh my God, again. All of a
sudden, this notion of review, or like, I guess it's reverse bombing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I take it back.
Review bombing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then they took it back.
Very technical people. You're making a big mistake.
Yeah,
you know?
That's it.
It's funny.
Well and Newell must be laughing, just killing himself, right?
Yep.
Watching those there. He sells the shovels, and it doesn't matter whether they're digging holes or burying bodies. Right? It's the same job. It's the same gig. He still sells the shovels.
Yep, it's true.
Okay, kids, get ready. Back of the book, just around the corner. But before we do that, I would like to just put in a little teeny weeny plug for Club Twit. For those of you not yet members, we have some great members in there, and I have to say I love them all and welcome you all. It makes it a great time inside the Discord, our Club Twit chat headquarters. But we need more, let's face it. Audience numbers are dwindling. More importantly, ad dollars are dwindling. This is across the board in the podcast universe. But we want to keep doing this, so you need to vote. Do you want us to keep doing it? If you do, I guess I'll put it this way. If you watch more than one show a week, I think it's worth $7 a month, right? That's less than $1 a show to get ad-free versions of all the shows, video versions of all the shows, including Paul's great Hands on Windows show, which is available in audio for free, but the video, you have to be a member. Hands on Macintosh, Untitled Linux show, iOS Today, and so on. We have a lot of great club events. Stacy's Book Club's coming up. You also get access to the Discord, so you can hang out and chat with us and our hosts. As they say, it's very exclusive, except you're all invited. $7 a month. There's family plans and corporate plans too. Visit us at twit.tv/clubtwit. And if you will join the club, it would be great to have you. It's a wonderful group of people in the community, and we want you in it too. All right, now back of the book time with Mr. Paul E. Thurrott and your tip of the week, sir.
My tip of the week is don't use threads. These people are ridiculous. No, that's not it.
I agree with you.
God damn.
I agree with you.
If you thought, every time you think you've eliminated toxicity from your life, just join a new talk.
It's social, baby. Keep posting on Insta. I love your Insta. And forget the rest of them. Forget the rest of them.
Okay, anyway. So some time ago, last month or something, I went down the rabbit hole of what does it look like to do an old-fashioned file share over a network in Windows, right? This is something we used to do in the 90s. It was so hard that in Windows XP, they added a simple share feature that never really worked great. And that was so hard that they added a home group feature in Windows 7, and then they got rid of that in Windows 10. And, we just don't have a good way to do this. So I found a workaround to make that work. The problem is something to do with MSA authentication, et cetera, et cetera. So I had written an article about that at the time, but there are other legacy technologies in Windows that suffer from the same problem. Like the feature's still sitting in there, like some vestigial leg or whatever. And we don't sign in as local accounts for the most part now. I mean, some of you guys do, like people listening to the show probably do, but but normal people don't. And if you want to remote desktop to another computer, it's kind of hard. Now, there's a bunch of workarounds, and none of them are as convoluted as the one I had to do for the file share thing. But basically, what you have to do is go into account settings in the settings app, right? And you go down to the sign in options, and there's an option in there. Excuse the brightness on my face, but I'm looking at this interface now that says for improved security, only allow Windows Hello sign-ins for Microsoft accounts on this device. Recommended. This is the reason why when you set up Windows the first time, you have to create a PIN, because a PIN is the minimum level of Windows Hello. So at the very least, you have to have a PIN. So to make this work, to use remote desktop on the computer, you want to remote to, I guess we'll call that the host. You have to enable remote desktop first. You have to uncheck that option. You have to sign out. You have to sign in using your password, right? One time. Then you can remote desktop into that computer using those credentials. You can actually type in your username and password for your MSA and it will work. I recommend once you've done that one time, turning that checkbox back on and then using a PIN, because you can now use your PIN to sign in again. You don't have to worry about using a password every time. Once you flip this switch, it will work, I think, forever. I have not encountered a point where it stops working, but it obviously writes some kind of a credential somewhere and, for reasons that nobody remembers because it's not 1999 anymore. Anyway, the point is it's a workaround and it does work, so you can do it. Mm. And that came up because of hands-on Windows, because I wanted to connect to a Windows 10 computer to do a show. And I did not want to connect OBS Studio or all the recording stuff to that computer because it's underpowered, right? I was like, well, surely there must be a way to remote desktop into this computer, and there is. That's how you do it. Works in Windows 10 and 11. And then a couple of app picks. Broadcom, which is a horrible company that no one should trust, purchased VMware. And yesterday, or 2 days ago maybe, they released VMware Workstation Pro and Fusion Pro, which are paid products, for free to individuals. They're still licensable to businesses. You have to pay. It's an annual thing now. Now these, back in the day, awesome, right? These are awesome apps. And I got to tell you, I'm not recommending it. In many ways, VMware Workstation Pro is a better kind of a client virtualization solution than, say, Hyper-V client. But my God, what you have to go through to get this stuff is a little weird, and I'm not sure I trust Broadcom in the slightest.
Just a reminder that you see the evil in the sign-up process, right? Like,
that's too bad.
Oh, yes, you do.
Free.
Yep. It's
just give us all
crazy.
your info.
Yep. And look, I'm not saying they're going to get rid of these products, and maybe that has something to do with this. I hope they don't do that. They are great products, but I yesterday
they've been smashing up VMware.
So I installed Fusion Pro on the Mac. Right, this is kind of was back in the day, still is, I guess, kind of a Parallels desktop competitor, paid product. Right, they have their own coherence type mode called Unity, and I spent a lot of time on this. And what I've never seen. You ever watch the end of like Prometheus, where the weird hybrid alien creature comes crawling out of the belly of the alien guy there? What I got was that, meaning I installed, this is my fault. This is not the product's fault, but I downloaded from UUP dump the latest version of Windows 11 24H2 for ARM. And what installed was, it said it was 24H2, but it was the Windows 11 desktop and start menu with Windows 10 apps. Like the settings app was from Windows 10. The file explorer was from Windows 10. I've never seen a Frankenstein disaster like this before. And I updated it multiple times to try to get it. And slowly the apps came back, but it's stuck on 21H2. It's like, what is this freaking thing? Anyway, I don't know what happened there, but I'm just throwing this out there. They're free. If this is interesting to you, if you have client-side virtualization needs, are technical and can get past the Broadcom terribleness, maybe sign in with a different, like Apple or other services that you use a fake account. Maybe do that. It's something to look at.
So you have to make I'm looking at it right now. So
you have to make an account,
okay.
and they they literally email you something that you click and then it lets you download it. Like you can't just go get it. Like it's unbelievable. It's horrible.
Yeah, that's their motto, right?
I don't trust this
Broadcom.
company.
We make the hair stand up the back of your neck.
Yeah, exactly. We make the Chinese look open and fun. It's just not. I don't know. It's just not good. And then separately, Opera has got a bunch of updates recently. The one yesterday, 2 days, I guess yesterday. They added their own AI-powered Help Me Write feature in their developer channel. Remember, they're doing like AI feature drops. They have that Aria AI built in, which is very good. We were talking about browsers a couple of weeks ago, and at the time I was like playing around with Vivaldi. I've been using Edge a lot because I've been updating that part of the book. I started using Opera probably, I guess, over the weekend. And I got to say, I got over a hump with Opera. And what did it was I've been using Arc a lot, right? And so Arc has all these weird features that you have to kind of adapt to. And that actually helped me get over the hump with Opera. If you do use Opera, I'll just tell you one of the weird things it does is Control Tab, which is how you go from tab to tab, right, in the browser. In most browsers, goes from left to right or whatever through your list of tabs. In Arc, it goes through only your, I think it's 5 most recent tabs. In Opera by default, it goes through some list of your most recent tabs, and I hate that. I hate that. Some people love it, some people don't. But one of the cool things about Opera is that it's infinitely configurable. And they have a keyboard shortcut section of settings, and you can change anything to anything, and you just change Control Tab to be the normal behavior, and it works fine. So that's what I did. And it's actually, I have to say, I kind of digging it. Like it's got a nice kind of minimalist UI. It's good.
Don't make me change browsers again, man. I can't take it, man.
You don't have to
this is what I do. You know, I move around. Like I'm
I just got on
promiscuous when it comes to browsers and other software. Don't switch.
Because I know if I switch, you're going to say Vivaldi. You're just going to do that to me. It's only a matter of time before Sleipnir pops up in your vocabulary. Let us get Run as Radio on the air here. Mr. Richard Campbell, sure.
One of the shows I grabbed while I was in Romania, I think it was the only one I grabbed in Romania. Annie Tavasto was also a presenter there. I've had her on .NET Rocks before. I think I opened the show with this. Like she was doing machine learning before it was cool. So like a real expert, like she'd always been there. And it's look all these people coming rushing around her. And very much a cloud native person. So, not hugely enamored of the Microsoft stack or anything like that. She's worked all over the place. But the wave and the show I wanted from her was, okay, well, more of us are using machine learning, but how do you make it sustainable? You need to update those models, and you have these sort of heavy lift moves to build the first model where everybody's paying attention, but what do you need after that to keep it relevant? It's going to be good for some period of time, but over a while they become less and less relevant as the company moves on and the model hasn't changed. And so she has been teaching this mechanism of sort of what machine learning DevOps looks like, the way that you build out infrastructure so that machine learning models can be routinely updated, and then hit us with the reality, which is when machine learning models generate data sets, somebody skilled enough to be able to smell that the data is wrong needs to look at it. And that's usually more than one person, depending on where the data is coming from. So to hear this really powerful conversation about, this tooling was going to make this process easier. Like you thought you were one and done using machine learning in the company. That's a mistake. Now you're going to need updates. And if you don't have the ability to look at the sets that it's generating from the latest model and go, that's not right, which is exactly what you did the first time around, you're going to be led astray. Like the software isn't going to protect you from you. The way I've described it was, software is only an amplifier. The question is it amplifying your intelligence or is it amplifying your stupidity? And and he got down in there, right? He's like, look, this is what you need to do to keep this stuff accurate and valuable. It's not simple.
Garbage in, garbage out.
That's it. Like really, Gigo's never been cooler than since ChatGPT took off. Like we're very much in a Gigo world. Did you train on 4chan again? Why do you think your results are poor?
Okay. And I think a little snoot right now wouldn't be.
You ready?
I wouldn't be adverse. Yes.
I I have been holding off doing this whiskey for a while because I was trying to figure out why it's as revered as it is. We're talking today about Lagavulin. Now, admittedly, I've been running through the classic malts, that collection that United Distillers put together in the late 80s, because they are great whiskeys without a doubt. But I don't drink a ton of Isla. Like, let's be clear. It's Pete's interesting to me, but it's rare that I really want it, right? I'm not a cigar smoker. Like, if you're going to drink a peaty whiskey, you want to have a cigar.
Kill your taste buds first. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
The only time that I find I crave it is if when we're doing a whole day of like smoking meat, right? Like if I for a while there, we were doing annual summertime brisket competitions. And if you're steeped in hickory smoke anyway, the smoky whiskey makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
And,
saturated.
And so, I mean, I'm glad I spent time on this. I've gotten too into researching whiskey now. This has gotten out of control.
That's good. This is good.
I feel like I got to the bottom of Lagavulin.
You're our own little Scarlett Johansson smart chat GPT.
So, look, the Isla was making whiskey before whiskey was a legal product. There is evidence that there was a distillery on the site of where Lagavulin is today in 1742. Wow. And in fact, it was referred to even then as Lagavulin. The first license to make whiskey on that location was taken out by a guy named John Johnston in 1816. It's very likely he was licensing what was already there. That was likely his. And, these were not really businesses in a lot of ways. This is a way that you used up barley in those early days. So they changed hands a bunch of times, and I could run them all down, but who cares? Where it becomes important is when the Mackey family takes control of it. And really in 1889, when Peter Mackey gets it, because Peter Mackey is one of the original gods of contemporary whiskey for as far back as this. So his uncle, James Logan Mackey, passes away. He takes it over. And this is when they've got a couple of different distilleries. And so he rebrands the whole group as Mackey and Co. And one of the products that Mackey and Co. started making then, this is 1889, is a product called Whitehorse, which is a blended whiskey where the base of the blend is Lagavulin. So, people wanted an expensive whiskey. And again, one of the things I love about the story, you can still buy Whitehorse today. It's still out there. I looked it up I think it was on Bevmo, and I found the 60 ounce, the 1.75 liter, $30.
Wow.
Right? $30. Hard to argue. Peter Mackey made a bunch of deals. He's also responsible for the Craigellachie, which is the place. I drink a little of the whiskey because it's not my favorite. It's the Space Side. That's the hotel I prefer to hang out when I'm in the area. It's the old train station and so forth. It's sort of in the center of Space Side. You're a stone's throw from McAllen and just down the road from Dufton and all the good stuff. When Peter Mackey passes away in 1924, he's got a bunch of partners. The company's been wrestling around, but they actually renamed the whole group Whitehorse Distillers, which will then be acquired by the Distillers Company, which, and DCL, the Distillers Company Limited, is best known, I mentioned this a number of shows ago, for making a customized strain of yeast, for recognizing that Pasteur first identified the very first bacterium in the world as a bacterium, and it was brewer's yeast. And so DCL tailored a yeast that virtually every distillation company used for some period of time, although they've diversified them there. And DCL is also one of the ancestors of Diageo, along with United Distillers. Like most distilleries, had a tough time during the Prohibition, shut down over World War II. They make a note that they only got electricity to the factory in 1948. So you think about that place was making whiskey for a couple of hundred years without electricity. Big fire in 51 that forced a big rebuild. Like many of the distilleries, as things got rough in the 70s and 80s, in 1974 they stopped doing floor mountings. And then in 88, when United Distillers has control of it, they declare the classic malts. And we've talked about this a bunch of times, right? The 6 different whiskeys. And what's hilarious is that according to the paperwork, when they added Lagavulin to the mix, because it was a peated whiskey and people don't like peated whiskey, they just said it wasn't going to sell well, right? Dalwhinnie, some of the others that we've talked about there, that group, Cragganmore, those are the ones that are going to sell well. And they were wrong. Lagavulin outsold them all by miles. And it was the first peated whiskey that really took off. It started the revolution. And by the way, they had not laid up enough. They didn't have enough. So now they were in a panic to actually try and make more and did all these things. Like it got nuts. Now, and then of course, 97 Diageo takes it over, which is where we are today. And the page that I've sent you to, themalts.com, that's actually owned by Diageo. They have all these different products there. Now, what is the deal with peat? We've talked about this a bit before.
And then put it. What's the deal? What's the story with Pete?
I ask that about my friend Pete all the time. What's the deal?
Yeah. So it turns out peat is partially decomposed vegetable matter.
I knew it.
Probably different than.
I knew it.
Yeah. Yep. And partially decomposed because it ends up in a peat bog, and a peat bog is an acidic bog which slows down decay, and so it sort of gets trapped in what would arguably a high carbon state. And so, literally for millennia, humans have been aware of the value of peat, and that you can cut it out into bricks, you can dry it, and you can burn it. And so, Islay, which happens to not have a lot of trees with its southwest exposure, this is how people heated their homes. And so peat was not a feature. It was an unfortunate byproduct of the fact that this is how you made heat. And when you wanted to distill something, you need some heat. And so they burned that. In fact, there are references in the early 1800s to the peat reek of Islay. Right? Yep. That it was not a feature. It was an unfortunate thing. Now, this is not common in the rest of Scotland because Scotland is the origin of the coal revolution, right? The first coal seams, James Watt, all that stuff. That happens there, and coal is the rock that burns. Coal is the product that was saving the forest. This is how it was referred to at the time. All right, we deal with acid rain later. But the fact that you had the rock that burns, it got distributed. And so, of course, you don't have those peat flavors. And then, of course, rail lines come along as part of this process, right? You have concentrated energy in the form of coal. You can burn it in a pressurized tank along with Watt's engine. And ta-da, you're able to move coal around to a lot of these places. And so coal comes to most of the rest of Scotland, the Highlands, Speyside, the Lowlands, all those areas. I because of rail, have access to coal, so that's what they use. But Islay, being an island, and same for Jura and Arran and the other islands, they don't get train lines because you can't put a train through water. And so they continue to use peat because that's what they have, right? Highland Park up in Orkney, peated. That's just the way it is. Although some distilleries, as whiskey becomes more popular, come to appreciate the value of peat and start doing combinations of a little bit of peat in their heat, as well as using coal for their heat. And this is drying the malt, right? So that's where the flavor comes into play. Oh, and there is a point that's made in a few different documents along the way that coal was being taxed, but peat wasn't being taxed. And the one thing the Scots appreciate is not having to pay taxes they don't have to pay.
Yep.
So here's an aspect, and I ended up reading a whole paper on this that I hadn't thought about, but peat has terroir. That is to say, different peat from different locations.
Kind of has terroir.
It is literally dirt, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it literally is terroir.
Can't argue.
So one of the things in the composition of the peat on the islands, like Islay and Arran, is seaweed. Oh. That there is a lot of seaweed in it. And so so we talk about in peated whiskeys from Islay having that sort of iodine, salty flavor. And part of the argument of that is that it's the composition of the peat itself, where when you do see peat used in the Highlands, it's typically what they call heather peat, that it was the ground cover of the area making the peat. And so it has a different flavor. The peatiness of whiskey is measured in phenolic levels. They call it in parts per million. And
TPUs. No, what was the what's the AI measurement? Tops.
Yeah, tops.
It's measured in tops.
And so, and one of the reasons this measurement system came along is, like I mentioned, in the 70s, when they stopped doing their own floor maltings, they started buying their barley already malted. And then peat gets introduced during the malting. So you have to be able to order it in the right concentrations. And so Lagavulin has peat phenolic levels of 45 parts per million. That's sort of where you aim it at. And as the peat thing took off and we started getting into peatier and peatier whiskey, so like the original Octomore from Bruichladdich, which was famously this very peaty whiskey, 100. Although today their masterclass edition, the BO39, which I've tasted and do not recommend, 300. So that's a lot of peat. Right? But the fact is, because you needed to be able to order it to specification, they had to standardize a lot of this stuff. And I would be remiss not to mention this last point about peat, which is that it is a massive carbon store, and burning it releases all that carbon back into the environment, which has become a huge issue. And there are large initiatives to restore the peatlands. So to protect that land.
The peat.
And as industrialization of maltings has improved, there are ways to introduce the phenolic flavors of peat into the barley without cutting peat out of the ground and burning. Anyway, we were talking about Lagavulin. Sorry for the sidetrack. But don't worry, there's at least one more before we're done today. The Lagavulin distillery has gone through many, many iterations, including the major burn down in 51 and so forth. Today, it is a contemporary distillery, lots of electronics, but rooted in the fundamentals still. They did switch to stainless mass tons a couple of decades ago, but they've stuck with the cypress wood washbacks. They've got 10 washbacks. They used yeast cream, and I only bring that up because both of you react strongly when I say yeast cream. And when I saw it, it's like, oh, I'm including that because it seems to amuse the boys. They only have 4 stills. They are very large stills, 2 washes and 2 spirits. The lie arms on the wash stills are unusual. They kind of curve up and then curve back down again and flatten out, which, lie arms are a whole study onto their own because it changes the reflux of the still. Their spirit stills have much straighter arms. Their new make is considered low. It comes in at 68 or 69%, where many distilleries are higher than that. I think that's got a lot to do with the age of their stills. Of course, they barrel at 63.5 because they barrel in bourbon, and pretty much you always barrel at 63.5 because the Americans make bourbon in their barrels at 62.5. And so you come in a percentage point higher to pull certain flavors from the wood, and virtually all Lagavulin is initially aged in American first use bourbon barrels. They finish in sherry casks. And the amount varies depending on how the flavors are coming. All right. I debated whether I was going to do this, but I can't see how I don't. Let's talk about Ron Swanson. You know who Ron Swanson is?
From Parks and Rec?
From Parks and Rec. So in
is
the
that
character,
what he drinks is Lagavulin?
That is
correct.
correct.
Oh my God, that's hysterical.
And it became a thing. Okay. So, I mean, you can give or take. I can pick up or leave Parks and Rec. It doesn't change my life.
To me, he is the reason you watch Parks and
he's
Rec.
amazing. Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, a character that's far lived beyond. So here's the joke. Of course, Swanson has these great monologues and he talks about Lagavulin and so forth. And at some point, one of the producers finally clues in. They've done all this free advertising for Lagavulin and contacts the distillery and just says, I don't know if you know this, but we make this comedy show and one of our characters drinks Lagavulin. And they're like, oh no, we're well aware. and then apparently they get along to the point where they end up writing a story, a multi-parter where Ron Swanson goes to the UK and ultimately goes to Lagavulin.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And the actor behind Ron Swanson is Nick Offerman. And genuinely, Nick Offerman not only loves Lagavulin, but loved the crew, like the people there. They liked everything about it. And they've been collaborating ever since to this day.
That's great.
One of my favorite, arguably my favorite thing of this entire thing was Nick Offerman made a Yule log video, 10 years ago, where he literally sat and sipped Lagavulin 45 minutes, never said a word.
I love it.
And it starts with him digging peat, which is hysterical.
Yeah. Fire in the background, sitting in a chair, amazing. Looking you dead in the eye and taking a sip of Lagavulin. Yeah. There is a 10-hour version of this, by the way, but it is clipped together. There are cuts, but the 45-minute version, Nick Offerman did that.
One shot.
It is genuinely a real shot.
I love it.
You've got it up on the screen now. They do the pullback.
There's the bottle.
They leave it there.
Yeah.
And it just stays.
It's my favorite Yule log.
It's the best. Amazing. It's truly great.
God, how did I not know about this?
So they asked Nick Offerman if he wanted to get involved in making whiskey. He's like, yeah, I do. And so in 2019, they put out a version of Lagavulin called the Offerman first release, which is an 11-year-old. And then a couple of years later, they did a version where they finished in Guinness casks. They called Offerman's second release. And just last year, the Offerman third edition, they did in charred oak, which was new oak charred off. And like last week, they announced a Caribbean rum cask finish called Offerman's fourth.
I see this Offerman on the page. I didn't realize it was that Offerman.
It's Nick Offerman.
Oh, that's
literally
hysterical.
It's this. Okay.
I'm sorry to interject here, but the best part of this Nick Offerman Ulog video is that, like all YouTube videos, it has most replayed sections.
Yes.
And nothing new happens in those sections. He's just sitting there
sipping,
holding and or drinking a glass of whiskey.
That's it. That's all it is. So look, there's a bunch of editions of Lagavulin because that's what Diageo does, right? And the 12-year-olds, the 11-year-olds who did still this edition. I mean, if you really dig around, they get as old as 37 years old.
Is it better?
No. There's one. There is one. There is. Look, don't waste your time. There is one. The Lagavulin 16 is the one. It is the whiskey they referred to as part of the classic collection back in '88. It should be on your shelves today. If you're going to have one Isla, this is the one. If you want to get introduced to Islas, this is the one. It's $100 in America to own a Lagavulin 16. You will not drink it quickly. I know. Now, some folks will describe it as licking a dirty ashtray. I think the polite term is it is drinking a campfire. And so for me, it's very much a mood. I'm always the person who says, like, look, I like the whiskey in front of me, and I will drink it. And I do enjoy it, but only at times. How often do I pick it?
The person that moves in a circle as the smoke from the fire moves. Like, I don't want to be in front of it.
Yeah.
You know?
And if you don't care, then you should drink your Lagavulin.
When you see whiskey snobs,
mm-hmm.
they often say, "Oh, you got any Lagavulin?" Like that's like the king. That sounds like that's a kind of a tell of a phony whiskey snob.
So this gets back to that whole classic malts deal. So when United Distillers put together those classic malts, then they marketed it.
Right.
So you can, here's the kicker. And and Paul's certainly seen this. I go to a bar, I quickly go study their whiskey collection. And I knew who sold it to them. I know by what's on the wall. And so if you see Dalwhinnie, Cragganmore, Talisker, Lagavulin, they bought the classic malt collection, right? They were pitched that, they bought them all.
Well, and to be fair, that may also be what people come in and ask for. So
sure, because it's what they know.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So they got to give people what they want.
I'm going to dress like this at Bill next week. I'm going to wear that jacket with jeans and a flannel shirt and walk around with a glass of whiskey. That's going to be my thing.
That's going to be your look the whole time. They're being confronted with a wall of a couple of hundred whiskeys is terrifying, right? That is the paradox of choice. What was brilliant about the classic collection was it was 6. It's enough. You can try them all. Right. And it's just picking enough. And it's not Glenfiddich, right? The original single malt that was marketed first, the only. There's lots of places we go in, they'll have Fiddick and nothing else. That's their one single malt. It's the easiest to get access to. It's well known. The next stage past this is the classic malts collection, and that's what a lot of people know and how they anchor on that. And if you can stomach Lagavulin, like if that flavor doesn't turn you off, it's a style thing because most people pick it up and go, "What? Why would you drink this? Like, I'm afraid you picked up the ashtray instead of the glass." But it's got a finesse to it. It is a beautiful drink. Once you get past that initial smoky hit, this thing has all that sort of briny, iodine, like the sitting in front of the campfire thing. It's absolutely real. And it's a groove. An ounce into this, everything's fine. You're fine. and you're in a place.
It's always true.
You know what? The place we're in right now, the end of the show.
That's
the place we've got
to. Called Vertigo.
Hello. Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com. That's his site on the net. Make sure you become a premium member for all the best content. lots of free content too, but the premium stuff's great. Pay for it. Just support Paul. He also has some books you might want to buy. Windows Everywhere. It's kind of a history of Windows through its development and its languages. And, of course, the Field Guide to Windows 11 featuring Windows 10. That's all at leanpub.com. Richard Campbell lives at runasradio.com. That's where his podcasts are, Run As Radio and .NET Rocks. He is going on the road again.
Well, Paul and I'll be together in Build.
Build is next week. We'll have our Build wrap-up right here at the usual time. That's Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC, live streaming at YouTube, youtube.com/twit/live. So you can go right there when the show starts and watch it from beginning to end. But you don't have to. You don't have to say, oh, I have to be available Wednesday at 11, because honestly, we make a podcast out of it. You can download it and listen to it or watch it at your leisure, audio or video, either from the website, twit.tv/WW, or on YouTube. There's a dedicated channel to Windows Weekly. Best thing to do is subscribe in your favorite podcast client. That way you'll get it automatically. And, of course, club members have a special URL they can use for the ad-free version of Windows Weekly. We do thank our club members for making this show possible. And you, Paul, and you, Richard, for showing up. Not too drunk,
It's the
not
least
too
we could do.
hungover. Yeah, it's good. It's good. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I know I pitched it well when all the comments now are like, oh, God, I want a whiskey.
Oh, that always does it. That always does it. And I like your line here in the Discord. Whiskey's a drink for older people because our taste buds don't work well.
It's true.
You need a stronger flavor to cut through.
Exactly right.
All of the damage.
But for those young, the way I equate it when a younger person wants to try it is like, listen, this is a very bright light. Do you really want it shined in your eyes?
It's really true. In fact, the first time you have a drink, it's like, oh, why does anybody drink this? You have to work your way up to it, I guess. Thank you, boys. Have a great week. Go have some fun with her. And we will be back next week live from Seattle, Washington for Build. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you, all you winners and dozers. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.